Chapter 41. My name is, even when he squeezed his eyes shut and opened them again, even when he deactivated and then reactivated 9 eyes, it remained the same. Kim Hana's contract was gold, while Sinyoung's was colorless. And why are you shining in gold of all things? One thing he got to learn was that the golden commandment applied to objects, not just people. In any case, he couldn't be sure of what to do here, based only on what he was seeing and hearing. He lacked enough information to make up his mind on one contract, while for the other one, he couldn't even figure out what it all meant. He couldn't be sure of anything, but I'll sign on this one. After a lengthy deliberation, Seol chose Kim Hana's contract. Huh. Shin Hansung's expression showed how stunned he was by Seol's choice. Meanwhile, Yun Seora was completely taken by surprise and became quite flustered. Can you tell us the reason? Shin Hansung raised his voice, and Kim Hana didn't try to stop the curly-haired youth. Instead, she lowered her head a little as her expression hardened, showing how shocked she was at the moment. Of course, she was putting on a performance. You not like the terms offered? No, that's not actually it. Your terms are so amazingly good that it's to the point where I'm feeling burdened by their weight. It is all right if you are honest with us, if there's a clause that you don't like. Not at all. I'm truly grateful that you have evaluated me so highly, but... As Seol blurred the ends of his sentence, he sneaked a glance in Kim Hana's direction. He only continued on after confirming the corners of her lips arching up ever so slightly. I have a certain personal reason for this choice. I can only feel remorse at refusing to sign such a wonderful contract. Not to mention, I should apologize to you as well. He tried to condense his explanations to as few a word as possible. His considered but firm refusal implied that they should stop here before things got any more awkward than necessary. Shin Hansung knew that, but he couldn't back off like this. He leaned forward with a determined expression on his face. Please hear me out. It would be a lie if we didn't consider your future potential, but more than that, we also truly appreciate what you've done for us. Sinyoung is an organization that strictly rewards those who deserve it. Especially your selfless actions of aiding young lady, the president's youngest daughter, we will definitely not forget about it. In fact, there are quite a few of us looking at you favorably already, myself included. The sweet words of temptation began pouring out from Shin Hansung's honey-dipped tongue. Too bad for him. Kim Hana had already placed her hand on one of the contracts. Doesn't that also mean there are some people who don't want me there, too? He had roughly figured out that the relationship between Yun Seora and Sinyoung was a complicated one. Out of the blue, Seol felt the sensation of touch softly wrapping around his right arm. Come with us, please. A pleading voice entered his ear canals. Yun Seora's stare trying to penetrate into Seol's soul was dyed in the emotions of anxiety. I'll do my best. Your best in what exactly? What could she even mean by that? Seol rained a fit of laughter almost breaking out of his mouth. Yun Seora's expression was far too serious for him to use a smile as his reply. This is a meaningless dilemma, isn't it? He didn't base his decision on 9 eyes. He didn't rely on his emotions nor his logic. There was one reason that he couldn't say out loud. Gyola, come closer, my child. The lingering memories from that dream. By this time, he had almost forgotten most of the contents, but the last moments still remained vivid in his head, the final moments. The man he suspected to be himself made a request, yet it was denied. But in the end, Seol received emotions in the form of a dream. He was curious. He wanted to find out how the request of his dream version was met. Of course, that wasn't all. He took into consideration both the warnings of Kim Hana as well as the golden stamp belonging to the Temple of Gyola. Also, there was this hard-to-understand fear in his heart that, once he signed up with Sinyoung, he'd get to live a life that was not much different from the one he experienced in the dream. He sure as hell didn't want to be abused like a slave, and also didn't really feel like being used as well. Even if the road ahead might get hard and arduous, he wanted to live this life on his own terms. So he just had to shake his head to say no. We can really treat you well. Yun Seora's voice entering his ears sounded more tearful than before. Shin Hansung let off a soft sigh. Why don't we do this then? Just as Seol picked up the pen with some difficulty, Kim Hannah broke her silence and spoke up. "Give us some time." "Time? Yeah, well, we will need some time to adjust the contract, and you'll also need more time to dwell on things, right? And you also need to go back home, too." Seol was about to sign on the dotted line, but the mere mention of home sobered him right away. Home. He realized that over 3 months had passed by already. What happened back home on Earth? His family? What about you, Seonhwa? Were they worried about him after he disappeared without telling them anything? That's right. It's not a bad idea to give yourself some time to think things over. Shin Hansung quickly voiced his opinion. Seol nodded his head to express his consent. Kim Hannah pocketed the contracts and stood up from her seat. "Seol and I will be heading to the temple, but what about you two?" "I shall take Miss Yun back to Sinyoung's HQ. After all, the president is waiting for her there. We'll just go our separate ways at the city of Scheherazade." As Shin Hansung stood up, Seol too vacated his seat. He hadn't a clue on what this temple and that Scheherazade were all about, but it seemed that he could go home for sure. When he looked around, the negotiation talks were still ongoing everywhere. He couldn't spot Shin Sang-ah anywhere. Hyun Sang-min was in the middle of an important-looking talk, his arms moving about to illustrate his points. Isiala was also in the middle of a lengthy talk with an unknown male. When her gaze met Seol's, she tried to stand up from her seat, but he simply waved his hand at her to indicate she shouldn't. He didn't want to interrupt her negotiation, after all. She must have understood his intentions because she sat back down while giggling to herself. "Should we wait for them?" Kim Hannah asked him, but Seol slowly shook his head. It wasn't as if he didn't want to be around them anymore, but their own paths were being laid out now, and he didn't want to insert himself into their lives when it wasn't really necessary anymore. "I'm sure we will see each other again." As long as they survived, they should, in the future. Seol took in the sights of the neutral zone for one last time before slowly turning around to leave. Since he heard that the method of transportation was a carriage, he thought it would be nothing more than a wooden cart being pulled by a couple of horses. But he got a pretty big surprise after seeing the actual thing. This four-wheeled carriage was far closer to a luxury coach, as it was covered in all 4 sides. Seol dazedly stared at the leather and velvet-like fabric covering the roof section, before shifting his curious gaze over to 4 strange animals tied to the front of the coach, and studied them with some interest. Their overall appearance was similar to a horse, but their sharp ears and humped back gave off an impression of a camel instead. Shin Hansung forced the 2 people tied up near the driver's seat of the coach to drink a certain substance, and in the meantime, Kim Hannah climbed aboard. "What are you two doing? Come on up." Seol and Yun Seora exchanged glances as they climbed aboard the coach. There were 2 bench seats facing each other inside. Kim Hannah parked her rear on the spot facing Seol, while Yun Seora sat down right next to the youth. Shortly afterwards, Kim Hannah closed the door and body of the coach shook a little, indicating that they were setting off. It only shook around in the beginning, and once they were on the move, the ride had become much more comfortable. When they gained some speed, Kim Hannah opened her mouth. "We will need around 40 minutes to get to our destination. We just have to travel along Zara." "Zara? It's just the name of a road leading to Scheherazade. Don't worry about it, though. I haven't heard news of monsters or other races attacking travelers on Zara for the past year or so." Seol tilted his head slightly. He still had no idea what was what, but these were things he had to learn about eventually. Clack, clack. The coach speedily crossed the barren wasteland. During the ride, Seol was kept entertained by his companions. Kim Hannah told him to let her know the place on Earth he wanted to teleport back to as soon as they arrived at their destination, before explaining things such as what he had to do after arriving there, the method of coming back once back on Earth, etc., etc. There were many things that caught Seol's interest among them, and one of those was the revelation that the flow of time here was different to that of Earth's with the ratio of 3:1, meaning Seol spending 3 months inside the neutral zone would equate to a month on Earth. Besides those, Kim Hannah also talked about stuff that could be brought back from Earth to Paradise. And Perhaps staying vigilant of Yun Seora's presence, she didn't forget to sell Sinyoung's advantages every now and then as well. Every time that happened, Yun Seora looked at him with pleading eyes and or tried to encourage his decision-making with her soft voice. Seol couldn't help but feel a bit of pressure from this approach. Looks like we're almost there. Kim Hana opened the coach's door and peeked outside before muttering out. Seol too peeked his head out past the open door, and as fierce winds whipped his hair about, his jaw nearly dropped to the floor. The enormous earth-colored fortress walls blindingly reflected the sunlight as they stood tall. After confirming Seol's expression, a smile crept up on Kim Hana's face. "Welcome to Scheherazade." The coach slowed down and continued on for another 5 minutes after going past the tall wall's entryway, before eventually coming to a halt. They then heard light knocks against the door, and Shin Hansung's voice telling them that they had arrived. "We should disembark here, then." Kim Hana sent him a signal with her eyes and climbed out of the coach first. Seol was about to follow after her, only to promptly realize why she sent him such a signal. Yun Seora was still holding onto his arm, that was why. "I should get going now. Thank you for the past 3 months." "It's been fun." How could she block him since he was trying to go home? When he carefully extracted his arm, she didn't try to stop him, but only until his wrist, though. Just as Seol's right hand was about to leave her grasp, she carefully held onto him. Miss Yun Seora. I'd like to see you again." Unlike before, she let her desire be heard in a clear voice. The first time he met her, her eyes seemed so cold and distant, yet for them to be this wet with emotions, Seol felt rather lost and hesitated slightly. "Yes, me too." Only then did she let his arm go. She never stopped looking at him even until the moment he finally left the coach for good. Seol closed the door behind him while licking his dried lips. "It's like I'm abandoning a kid or something." The coach started and moved away. Seol's gaze continued to linger on the back of the coach as it slowly gained distance, before turning away to take in the sights of Scheherazade, the most prosperous city within the territory controlled by humanity. Kim Hana was waving her hand at him from the top of a stone staircase. And Seol could see behind her a spire so tall and upright, it seemed to pierce the heavens above. While mounting the steps, Seol realized that the spire, or the tower, was made up of a strange construction material that emitted this pale hue that didn't seem quite right to be called white. That is the Temple of Luxuria. Out of the 7 gods, she's the one in charge of healing skills used by the priests. Upon hearing that, Seol could see that countless people going in and out of the entranceway supported by huge pillars. Most of them were wearing the same ice-white robe Maria wore when she prepared herself for the ceremony. In that case, could Maria be still here? I think she's already left, though. Well, her recovery has ended already, and she can't return to the neutral zone anyways. Okay, to where? To the south. Kim Hana waltzed straight past the entrance. Upon entering, Seol was greeted by long corridors to both his sides, and in front, a slightly darkened assembly hall. He spotted a woman sitting behind a counter of some sort before the hall. That woman lifted her tired eyes and stared as Kim Hana approached her. "What brings you here?" "We came to use the transfer gate here." Kim Hana presented a piece of paper to this woman. "A level 1. The place he's returning to is Area 1. Oh, it's his first time using this service. He exited the neutral zone today." "Ah, that's right, today's the day. In any case, we have to establish a new return point then. Over here." The woman read the paper with squinting eyes before suddenly raising her hand up high. An Asian man with black hair appeared from somewhere beyond the corridor and hurriedly came over. "The reception lady?" asked this new guy. "You're from the Area 1, correct?" "Yes." When she asked while handing over a piece of paper, the Asian man nodded his head. "Then help me calculate the coordinates. Let's see. Area 1, Seoul, Seodaemun District, the suburb of Hanjun. Ah, this shouldn't be too hard." The Asian man smiled. "I have a place in the suburb of Yungam, you see. I'll be relying on you then, and also." The woman stared straight at Seol. "You weren't planning to head back to Earth looking like that, yes? We'd like to utilize the storage service." Kim Hana replied as if it was par for the course. "Since you're level 1, it's for free. Here, please use room number 8. You know how it works, yes? I've explained to him already. You're a commendable guide, then. The woman handed over a small key with a plaque while looking rather relieved. Sial received the key and walked down the path to his right. The interior further in was divided into several tall floors with walls glowing in an amber hue. And he saw many doors, each easily exceeding over 2 meters in height. He found a door with a silver 8 shining on the front and entered the room. The items of lost paradise couldn't be taken back to Earth, with the exception of a few. This meant that he had to store his things away before leaving, and temples happened to be the most secure place to do so. While the asking fee was exorbitant, as his stuff would be protected by divine power, the security was pretty much the best out there. However, one could only use this service for free at level 1 and 2. Once one became level 3, at which point he'd be considered as an actual, true combat force, he'd have to spend something called achievement points if he wanted to use either the transfer gate or the storage service. He propped his 2 spears against the wall and took off his armors. He still had the clothes he wore from Earth, but they were far too tattered now. What a relief it was, since Kim Hannah and her discerning fashion sense brought along some clothes and underwear for his usage. I forgot to thank her. Sial finished getting dressed and checked his items one last time. He had to leave behind elixirs as well as the divine stigmata. He was slightly worried about them being stolen, but since a god was personally protecting the temple, he thought he should believe the security of this place for now. He finished sorting through his articles and left the storage room before locking the door. The silver 8 on the door then changed its color to gold. From here onwards, only Sial could open this door. Even if someone else came in possession of the door's key, it would still not open. While walking on the corridor, Sial fell into deep thought. He couldn't really believe that he was returning to Earth this easily. Why? Back inside the dream, he couldn't return to Earth even after a considerable length of time passed by since his departure from the neutral zone. The dream version of him missed home a lot during the early part of his life here. Was this yet another difference between contracted and invited? Sial couldn't help but feel a bit of regret. He may have accepted the fact that he had to leave the neutral zone. But leaving behind the attachments formed through interactions proved to be another problem altogether. What are the kids doing now, I wonder? Did they sign their contracts all right? They probably wanted to go back home, too. Should he have waited for them to finish and leave together? At least he should have said goodbyes before leaving. He only signaled to them with his eyes because he didn't want to disturb them, but now he was feeling a bit of regret doing that. When Sial got back to the reception, the Asian man was no longer there. Only Kim Hannah and the reception lady were waiting for him. The lady beckoned the youth to come closer. "Show me the back of your hand, please." When Sial wordlessly presented his left hand, she placed another paper with a complicated diagram drawn on its surface there and pressed it tightly to his skin. "And with this, your return coordinates have been set. Whenever you use the transfer gate from here onwards, you will always arrive at the address you provided us. If you plan to move house, you need to tell us right away, or we might end up causing unnecessary chaos on Earth." "I understand." Sial replied and returned the key. Kim Hannah explained previously that he needed to do that once he was done with storing his items. The lady opened her eyes slightly wider before giving him a slip with a number 8 written on it. I'm sure you heard the explanations already, but still, don't forget to take good care of this slip. And also, you know that after retrieving your stored items, you need to confirm the color of the number on the door, yes? Yes, from gold to silver. Correct. If the color remains gold, that means you left something behind. Unless you wish to extend the period of the storage service, things will get mighty complicated for both sides, so please check thoroughly. The reception lady sounded rather resentful about something. She then handed 2 more pieces of paper to Sial. One of these is used when you wish to return to paradise. You've performed missions back in the neutral zone, so you should know that when you tear this in half, a transfer portal will open for you. People who don't possess any markings whatsoever won't be able to see the portal nor feel its presence, but still, I recommend finding a quiet place with no one else nearby. What about the other one? It's the list of items you can bring back from Earth. It's your first time, so peruse the list and familiarize yourself with the contents. Sial carefully tucked both papers inside his pocket. Phew, all finished. Now then, you just need to sign over here. The lady pushed forward yet another paper, a document this time, for Sial to sign while sounding as if they were finally near the finish line. It was a non-disclosure agreement, forbidding Sial from revealing anything even remotely related to the lost paradise to other people on Earth. Such an agreement was also covered by the divine powers, so the moment it was signed, the gods' powers ensured that the terms would be enforced no matter what. One could tell how much thought had been given to maintaining the secrecy. He already knew as much from the dream. And Kim Hannah explained it too during the coach ride, so Sial signed the document without too much fuss. Honestly, there were a few things that irritated him slightly. But as these processes had to be performed for someone wanting to use the transfer gate for the first time, he said nothing and endured. Very good. Please head inside the assembly area behind me and use the gate there. Finally, he was allowed to leave. You finished much faster than I thought. Well, there wasn't anything too complicated after all. Okay, let's go. Kim Hannah stepped forward first. Just before he entered the assembly hall, Sial took the last lingering look behind him and sighed out softly. But before he could enter, tap, 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 tap. Suddenly, echoes of hurried footsteps rang out and, "Wait for me." And a familiar voice called out to him. Sial turned around in surprise. Kim Hannah, too, was rather puzzled as well. Why is she here? They saw her leave with the coach not too long ago, so... The woman supporting her body with her arm against the wall near the entrance while panting heavily was none other than Ainz Audioverse. She looked relieved after finding out that Sial hadn't left yet. She regulated her heavy breathing, swallowed her saliva, and shouted out a question. "Your name." "Please tell me your name." Sial's expression hardened considerably. "Sio." His mouth opened reflexively before closing shut again. His lips quivered uncontrollably. "Sial." "But isn't that your surname?" He was about to say his name was Sial, but suddenly his eyes grew wider and wider. His heart was beating wildly now, his sight blurred. How? When you entered the second floor in the tutorial, there was an alert. I heard your name then, but I forgot. The alert said, "Mr. Sial, something has arrived on the second floor." Ah, so, in the end, someone did hear the alert. I always thought it was strange. Your name was definitely 3 words, yet you kept calling yourself Sial all the time. That's. Her words hit the bullseye, and Sial began stuttering. Can you please tell me your full name?" Sial closed his eyes shut. Quite inexplicably, the days he spent in the neutral zone brushed past his consciousness. In the mornings, he ate breakfast with Yi Siala, Yi Sungjin, and Yun Seora. Then, he met with his teammates on the first floor and discussed the day's schedule and battle tactics. They did their best to complete various missions. When they successfully cleared missions, they would head off to a lounge and chat over refreshing drinks. He sometimes met with Shin Sang-ah and Hyun Sang-min and asked them how they were doing. He then returned to his quarters, share the day's activities with his roommates before falling asleep. It didn't matter how many times he recalled them. Those were good memories. When he opened his eyes, he found Yun Seora quietly waiting for him, her breathing now normal. My name, it's... His throat dried up. If his heart pounded any harder, it might explode out of his chest. It'd be 3, maybe 4 years since he willingly revealed his full name. An all-too-familiar sensation of vertigo finally left him, allowing Sial to take a deep breath. His trembling lips parted and let the air out. My name is... And finally, Jihu. Sial was now Sial Jihu. My name is Sial Jihu. He stared straight at Yun Seora and smiled dimly as he was walking past the assembly hall and towards the gate. Was there a reason to hesitate telling her your full name? Kim Hannah asked him. Now that I think about it, I was getting kind of curious too. Why did you always say your name was Sial? I mean, that's your surname, right? Sial Jihu kept on walking resolutely for a while before slowly opening his mouth. I was Sial. For the last 3 to 4 years, I was Sial. Kim Hannah's expression reflected how confused she was. She wouldn't know, of course. It was the story from the days when he was still addicted to gambling, after all. His family disowned him. His title gradually changed from son to idiot, then to bastard, then finally to lying asshole. In the end, never mind being referred to his name, he wasn't even treated like a human being anymore. The distance between him and his love also widened, and he even got called a son of a bitch by her. Before he knew it, no one was calling him by his name. And he stopped telling others what his full name was, too. Only that, back in the casino, some people called out to him using Mr. Sial, Sial Hyung, etc. etc. And so, Sial began accepting that as his name. Okay. So why did you decide to reveal your full name, then? Sial Jihu momentarily stopped walking, not sure. His gaze drifted up to the ceiling, unable to come up with a sound explanation even though he tried. I'm not sure, it's just... I thought that now I can know, maybe I can't be certain of that, but... Sial Jihu slowly lowered his gaze back down. At least, I thought that if it's Miss Yun Seora. He swept up the back of his long hair and smiled wryly. I should be able to tell her my name without being embarrassed about it. Chapter 42. Spilled Milk 1. I deposited some money into your bank account. Just as they arrived near the transfer gate, Kim Hannah told Sial Jihu. He had been dazedly looking at the massive oval-shaped portal and was caught off guard. His eyes widened in surprise. Money? But I haven't. It's not the contract signing fee. You'll only get that after signing the contract. Kim Hannah cut him off before he went any further. Just think of it as a small gift from me saying thanks. I'll be able to move around a bit easier now, all thanks to you. Sure, but is it okay for me to receive this money? Of course. This is the reward that you totally deserve, so don't sweat it and spend as you like. Thanks? What do you mean, thanks? I should be the one thanking you. Anyways, go confirm it once you arrive on the other side. I've taken only a little bit out of my own allowance, so don't get your hopes up too much. In any case, there are things you gotta take care of first, am I right? She was right about that. Not only did he have financial debts to pay off, but there were also other forms of debt he had to clear up. Thanks, I appreciate it. Okay, you can spend it in any shape or form you want, but put out the urgent fires first, okay? Not on useless stuff. Making sure that there won't be any trouble back on Earth is one of the tenets the Earthlings must adhere to. Sial Jihu stood before the gate. The blue-colored substance, gently waving in front of him, emitted a blindingly arresting light. It should be around the middle of April when you return. I'll spend another day here before going back to Earth. I'll give you a call in, about 8 hours later in the Earth time. Sial Jihu's attention was focused solely on the portal in front of him, and he could just barely nod his head to show he had heard her, before he cautiously stepped forward to enter. Almost right away, the back of his left hand began emitting bright light, and then, an even brighter light, powerful enough to blind the onlookers, swallowed him. As the youth was gradually enveloped by the brilliant light, Kim Hannah shouted out while waving her hand. You better answer my call, okay? If you don't, I'm gonna march straight to your home. Sial Jihu. As the sensation of being sucked in took over, Sial Jihu closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he could see the familiar sight of his rented room. He was inwardly worried whether he could really come back home, and that he'd not end up in some weird destination instead. But the end result was a resounding success. Sial Jihu didn't know who that man was, but that guy definitely did calculate the coordinates accurately. His relief lasted only for a brief moment, however. Sial Jihu frowned deeply and covered his nose. A seriously foul stench suddenly assaulted his senses, that was why. When he swept his gaze around, he couldn't help let out a shocked gasp. This place was an utter mess. He opened the windows to let the fresh air in. Sial Jihu took a deep breath and wordlessly studied the streets outside. He spotted college students giggling and talking among themselves as they walked, a taxi slowly driving down the hill. I'm back. He could more or less appreciate the fact that he was back on Earth for real. What time is it? Sial Jihu instinctively rummaged through his pockets, only to realize that his phone was nowhere to be found. Ah. He remembered that the mobile phone was one of the items prohibited from entering paradise. which meant that it had been left behind in front of Yu Xianhua's place a month ago. He probably left his bank card there as well. Thinking of confirming the time, Xiao Jihu had no choice but to switch his old laptop on. It was thickly coated with dust, but thankfully, it turned on without a problem. 17th April, Monday 09:14:07 a.m. I was summoned on the 16th of March. It seemed that the time difference between the Earth and the Paradise being around 1 to 3 was correct. Now that he confirmed the time, Xiao fell into a slight dilemma. What should I do now? It wasn't that he had nothing to do, but he had way too many things to do instead. There was a reason why Kim Hannah told him to come back to Earth. She demanded that he made sure accessing Paradise from Earth would be a trouble-free affair moving on. If he was reported as missing for some reason, then there would be a lot of headaches for everyone involved. In that regard, one could say that Xiao Jihu was already able to move around quite freely. Unless he was the one contacting them first, his family or Yu Xianhua would never call him on their own volition. They hadn't called him in the last few years, after all. Even his close friends stopped talking to him a long time ago. Wait, that's not something to be happy about, is it? He needed to right all the wrongs he committed one by one, and in order to do so, he needed money. He could now understand why Kim Hannah left him with some cash. Okay, first. Xiao Jihu connected to the internet wirelessly. He accessed his bank account online, and when he saw the amount there, he gasped out in shock. What? 150 million? It was a sum with 7 zeros. He was thinking of a couple thousand at most, so this amount completely shocked him. What the heck? That woman, she said it's from her allowance, so how come? Since he didn't know how much Kim Hannah made in a month or how much her combined asset could be, perhaps it wasn't that strange for him to react in this manner. Xiao Jihu continued to look at the laptop's monitor and not long after that, spotted the transaction history of Yu Xianhua transferring 2 million. That sobered him up in an instant. He had returned the money in cash, but he had borrowed from her lots more besides that amount. When he checked the transaction history for the past 3-4 years, a bitter chuckle escaped from his mouth. I have to pay her back first. It took him quite a bit of time to tally up every cent he owed, but he persevered and carried on. Dad paid back around 28 million. Mom, 16 million. Hyung lent me 2.2 mil. Jinhee, 600,000. Ah, right. I stole her laptop and her car, too. He had already sold the laptop at a flea market, and he left that car in a pawn shop near the casino. As the details of his past wrongdoings reared their ugly heads in his head, his guilty conscience swelled up uncontrollably. He might end up paying back more than necessary, but he didn't want to ask anything from them in return. He finalized the amount he took from Yu Xianhua and got a nasty shock. I borrowed this much from her. Even a casual calculation said it was around 46 million. He had no idea during the time when he was taking small bites here and there, but now that he finished tallying them up, the amount was no laughing matter at all. Where did she even find that much money to begin with? Xiao Jihu sighed. Suddenly, the amount of 150 million seemed rather inadequate. Of course, he wasn't going to hold back here. After all, only by resolving all of his previous financial indiscretions would he be able to properly move on and take the first step in his new life. In any case, I don't even have a phone or my bank card. If there was a silver lining here, then that would be him having only his phone and the lone bank card he frequently used on person that day. He managed to dig out his nearly forgotten wallet from the corner of his room and put on his shoes before taking his leave. The first place he stopped by was the bank. He immediately got a new card to replace the lost one and paid in full 30 million he borrowed from the money lenders. And then he withdrew the rest of 120 million in cash. He got 24 bundles of 50,000 bills, each bundle containing 100 notes. He grabbed a taxi as soon as exiting the bank. He had taken care of the most urgent fire first. His pockets were full, too. His next destination. Obviously, it was the casino. As soon as he arrived at the Siorak Land Casino, Xiao Jihu asked the security staff to ban him permanently from entering the premises. Fearing that he might run into someone who recognized him there, he hurriedly stopped by the nearby pawn shop to recover the car. The interest had piled up pretty high, but he was happy enough to get the car back. His little sister used to go on and on about driving, so their father went and bought this car for her when she got admitted to a very famous university. It may not have been an expensive model, but it had sentimental value. Now that he had a car, he no longer needed a taxi. While driving back to the family home, he stopped by at a computer store and bought the latest, top-of-the-line notebook as well. Jihu parked the car at an adequate enough place, and he walked up to the front gate of the family's house as his heart pounded away. He saw the doorbell, but his hands didn't want to rise up. He briefly entertained the idea of leaving everything behind here and just leave before he was seen. He didn't think about the possibility of this event happening, but now that he was here, he no longer felt confident enough to face his family. He spent the next several dozen minutes in front of the house. His hands repeatedly rose up to the bell before falling back down again. In the end, though, Jihu took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Maybe his knocking was too soft because there was no reaction. Maybe no one's home. He swallowed his saliva and slowly keyed in the door code. He then heard the gate unlock. He cautiously stepped inside the building, but then he had to come to an abrupt stop. A man wearing a pair of glasses stood on the stairs to the second floor and was looking back at him with an unfriendly expression on his face. Hyung. He was Wusiak, his older brother. Why, you haven't left for work yet? Wusiak glared at him before silently turning around and going back upstairs. Slam. Soon, the sound of a door slamming shut that was loud enough to make Jihu flinch resounded out. Of course. His expectations took a knock just now, but then again, he was in no position to expect anything else to begin with. However, he still wanted to apologize. He figured that it'd be for the best to finish his thing and leave as soon as possible. He placed an envelope filled with money in front of Wusiak's room and then headed straight to his little sister's room. He found Jinhee sound asleep on her bed, wearing nothing but a sleeveless shirt and underwear. She was drooling, too. Yeah, skipping Monday morning lectures was an important ritual for her, wasn't it? Regardless, she possessed keen senses. very carefully pulled the sheets to cover her up, then placed the laptop on her desk. He pulled out the car keys and won 5 million and tucked them inside her handbag, too. And just as he was about to creep out of her room, her voice still sounded sleepy, but at the same time it was also definitely not friendly. What do you want? Accompanied by the sounds of fabric rustling, Jinhee kicked the sheets and got up. Jihu flinched slightly. Why, you were awake. Who the hell are you to enter my room without my permission? She stepped away from the bed and strode towards him. Then her eyes fell on her desk. I was wondering what the hell you were doing. You came here to give me this? Huh? Yeah. Jinhee began frowning as if seeing his face made her nauseous. What a joke. She suddenly grabbed the laptop and threw it hard. It landed on the ground with a loud thud and bounced around. Take it and get lost. Wait, Jinhee? Jinhee, my ass. I don't care, so get the hell out of here right now. She stomped in closer to Jihu and angrily pushed him. He wasn't planning to resist her in the first place, so he backpedaled several times before landing hard on his butt. Not even bothering to see if he was hurt or not, she snorted derisively and picked up her handbag. What a fucking joke. What, you finally won some money at the casino? Why else would a damn thief like you suddenly think about his little sister? Her expression remained mocking as she took a look inside her handbag. She saw the bundle of bills amounting to 5 million as well as the car keys, and she cocked up an eyebrow. She blinked a couple of times and then lifted her head. Big brother. She wasn't speaking to Jihu. Before anyone noticed, Wusiak was entering the room with an envelope in his hand. He was worried that Jihu might cause a problem and quickly came here, but upon encountering a situation that could be described as the total opposite to what he was worried about, all he could do was to alternate his gaze between his siblings. What is this? His voice sounded hard and firm. He threw the envelope on the floor, causing the bills inside to spill out. Jinhee's eyes widened. What the hell? How much is this? She began counting, then her jaw nearly dropped to the floor. 50 mil, and then she looked back into the handbag. 55 million. She then remembered the car key and the laptop as well. "Ha, you must have hit a jackpot, huh?" Jinhee returned everything back to him. When Seol Woowiak spoke in a cold tone, Seol Jinhee shot a glare at him. "Why, are you mad? It's obvious. He got this money through gambling." "It's still money, isn't it?" "No, I won't give it back." Seol Woowiak reached out to snatch the cash away from her hands, but she yanked the handbag away and the envelope with money in it before shoving them both underneath her clothes to hug them tightly. "Seol Jinhee, what? You really want that dirty money?" "Dirty or not, this money rightly belongs to this family. It belongs to us in the first place, don't you get that? Don't you know how much Dad and Mom are struggling nowadays?" When the two Seol siblings' emotions began running high, Seol Jihu hurriedly intervened and separated them apart. He didn't come here to watch them fight. He at least needed to resolve this misunderstanding before doing anything else. "Hyung, Jinhee, you guys got it wrong. I didn't get that money through gambling." Seol Jinhee stopped arguing with her oldest brother and spun her head to face him. "Fuck off." She snorted as if the whole notion genuinely made her laugh. "If you were planning to lie, then make it more convincing, okay? Ah, maybe you stole this. Did you rob a bank or something? I'm telling you the truth." Seol Jihu pleaded with a frustrated expression on his face. "I stopped gambling. I've already asked the casino to ban me from entering the place. And the money's from a commission. No, it's from the work." "You stopped gambling." "A lifetime ban from entering the casino?" Seol Woowiak and Seol Jinhee asked at the same time. "I stopped gambling about a month ago. And today, I came here straight after asking Seorak Land to permanently ban me from stepping foot in that place. Please believe me." Seol Jihu explained as clearly as he could. However, it wasn't the issue of them not understanding him, but rather everything to do with trust. "So what you're saying is, you stopped gambling, you voluntarily asked to be permanently banned, and this money is legit. Is that right?" As if he found the idea just too unbelievable, Seol Woowiak asked again. "Stop fucking wasting my time, okay? You think I'll fall for your lies again?" Seol Jinhee retorted derisively. "Oh, so when we begged you to get the entry ban, you didn't even pretend to listen. And when we tried to do it for you instead, didn't you throw an almighty tantrum? You expect us to believe you now, Jinhee. Ha, how dare you make that face in front of me? What, you thought that just because you brought home some money, I'd start fawning all over you or something? You thought I'd start calling you Opera again? Stop dreaming, you bastard. This is this and that is that. This money is something that belongs to this family to begin with." Seol Woowiak cut his little sister off there. "I'll confirm it." His glare was full of suspicion as he switched on his smartphone. 3-4 ringings later, Seol Woowiak opened his mouth. "Is this the Seorak Land? Yes, I'd like to ask for a person to be banned from entering your—" "Ah, I'm his older brother. His name is Seol Jihu. Come again." Seol Woowiak's voice became progressively louder. "He asked to be permanently banned. Today, personally." Seol Jinhee quietly listened from the side and became dazed herself. In that case, is it possible to find out when was the last time he entered your—" "Yes, the last time." "It was the 16th of March? A short while later, Seol Woowiak hung up. Seol Jinhee's attitude had softened a tad, but she still continued to glare at Seol Jihu. Seol Woowiak spoke up as if he was still unconvinced. "I still can't believe this." "Hyung, really No, wait, fine. Let's say you were telling the truth. Then just where did you get this money from?" That's from? I heard that Seonhwa gave you 2 million a month ago." He knew about that. Seol Jihu could only open and close his mouth, unable to say anything. "I also heard that you returned everything later that night, too. You didn't have a single coin to your name, so how can you earn this much money in a month without resorting to gambling? Not only that, you brought a laptop and a car key." They were rather sharp and pointed questions. Even Seol Jinhee found it strange after hearing them. "Wait, this is that super expensive gaming laptop." She began taking a closer look at the throne laptop, and sure enough, her suspicion grew even stronger. Seol Jihu realized his mistake then. Should he chalk this one to his desires getting the better of him? He remembered his little sister loved to play games. So he shelled out over won 3 million to buy the best gaming laptop found in the shop. How could he have ever guessed that the damn thing would end up being a potential source of trouble? What should I do now? In the end, he had no choice but to bluff his way out of this one. If he hesitated and wasted time here, they would start suspecting him with something else completely unrelated. That's why I'm here today, to talk to you about what's going on. He carefully squeezed out each and every single word. If he just said whatever that came to his mind, they would latch onto the holes in his story pretty quickly. So Seol Jihu cautiously chose what he wanted to say. I was introduced to a job through a person I know. It pays quite well. Just what kind of work pays this much? Oh, that. I got lucky, that's all. Something big happened and I received a large bonus. Horse racing or sports betting. Hyung. Lottery? Seol Jihu rubbed his face. He got to confirm one more time what his family thought about him. But how could he blame them? He deserved it, after all. This money has nothing to do with gambling. Can you repeat everything you said in front of Mom and Dad? Doing that was a part of Seol Jihu's original plan, but it had changed now. His Hyung or his little sister might not be able to spot the fault in the story, but he could foresee his father asking many uncomfortable questions already. I'd like to do that, but I have to go. He'll be home soon. It's only because I'm really busy. I was working outside the office today, that's why I'm here. So please speak to Dad for me, please. What do you want me to say to him? Very soon, I'll be going out of town for a while. The duration could be as much as 1, maybe over 2 months. You won't be able to contact me during that time, but don't worry about me. He managed to explain, albeit just barely. Both Hyung and his little sister still seemed confused, but there was no helping it. Seol Jihu couldn't tell them anything concrete even if he wanted to. I gotta go. I'm running behind schedule. I'll come by next time to properly greet Mom and Dad. Seol Jihu forced out a smile and bade his goodbyes. He opened the door, climbed down the flight of stairs, and opened the front door, but until he closed the door. Never mind trying to stop him, he couldn't even hear them call out his name. Of course, he used the excuse of being busy, but still. For some reason, he felt like all his vigor was leaving his body. You thought that just because you brought home some money, I'd start fawning all over you or something. His sister's words, spoken to him when his mind was in too much of a chaos to hear her, finally landed their lethal blow. As if they knew that he deserved the pain, the blow landed real hard and deep. I wanted to apologize properly. He was too busy coming up with excuses that he couldn't even get to say sorry once. His first step didn't work out as he wanted to, but he still had one more person to apologize to. Seol's head remained lowered as he trudged towards the nearest subway station. His shoulders drooped powerlessly. Chapter 43. Spilled milk, too. Seol Jihu continued to wander aimlessly on a certain street. It wasn't that he didn't know what to. He was just hesitant. Hesitation gripped him tightly and prevented him from taking that last step. For a while, he walked the same street over and over again. Eventually, his steps cautiously slowed to a stop, as if he was standing on slippery ice. While standing still, he took a look inside a certain coffee shop through its front window. His gaze was directed beyond the tables and chairs, to a young woman preparing coffee beyond the counter. It was Yu Xianhua. She was truly beautiful. Her clear eyes seemed to imply how honest she was. The light shining within those eyes was calm yet passionate. Her slender hands cautiously handled the hot water, the soft and warm radiance whenever she smiled. Was that guy confessing to her? A man receiving a mug of coffee from her hesitantly pushed his phone forward. Yu Xianhua's eyes opened up a little wider, but she still managed to shake her head softly enough for her neatly tucked-in hair to gently brush her neck. The man still tried to present her with his phone, but only after she bowed her waist did he withdraw his disappointed hand. Even though she seemed a bit troubled, never once did Yu Xianhua lose her charming smile. The shop's door issued a ring, and the rejected man walked out. Seeing that man's back trudge away, Seol Jihu felt a certain amount of unexplainable déjà vu. He took in several breaths and reached out towards the door handle, only to freeze on the spot again. He would have reached the door if he let his hand inch forward just a little bit more. However, the distance between himself and the door to the shop suddenly felt so wide and impossible to close, and it grabbed hold of him tightly. In the end, he withdrew his hand and placed it on his chest. That was when he felt it, his pounding heart, and his fear. The tables would be filled with patrons right past the lunch hour. But, after 4 in the afternoon, the shop would usually become less crowded. After the man who had been occupying a certain table for a long time finally left, a waitress finished tidying up his table, returned to the counter, and began speaking to her co-workers. Body, 6 points. Then, another waitress who was busy with wiping clean one of the display shelves began laughing her head off. Wow, how generous of you. Face, 3 points. Fashion sense, 5 points. Finally, a different waitress stopped organizing the vibration bells and chimed in as if she was waiting for this chance. She then clicked her tongue. A total of 14 points. How unfortunate, but rejected? Girls. Ainz stopped operating the POS terminal and turned around to face the waitresses. They stopped their chat and then began giggling non-stop. Seeing this, Ainz slowly shook her head. Is it really that fun? Stop being so coy, Ni. We all know that you're secretly enjoying this. What do you mean, enjoying what? I just find it a little troubling, that's all, if you continue to. That's only because you're such a stonewall. By the way, manager, you wasn't that second person to confess today? It was 10 people last week. At this rate, we might have a new record. Seeing 3 waitresses chat among themselves in clear excitement, Ainz could only sigh softly to herself. The truth was, she was blessed with outstanding beauty, so there were quite a few men who would approach her and ask her out during the day. Also, there would be no man alive who would simply walk by disinterested after hearing her comforting voice and the way she gracefully carried herself. Such events kept occurring every single day, so the 3 girls working as part-time waitresses here began assigning points to all the potential suitors asking her out. One of them was tasked with the body, another one with the face, and the last one with fashion sense. They began critiquing without anyone's permission. They even arbitrarily decided that the top combined points should be 30. Of course, Ainz told them to stop and behave themselves, but in a strange twist of logic, the girls began arguing in their defense that any guy who wished to date their respected manager should score at least 24 points. For the record, out of hundreds of men who tried their luck, 25 had been the highest score so far. For something these girls started as a bit of joke, the 3 of them were rather strict in their judging criteria. In any case, Ainz herself wanted this critique panel to disband with immediate effect. After all, no matter how careful these girls were, there was bound to be a slip-up sooner or later, and the customer might overhear them, which would naturally lead to a huge headache. Oh. We might have our 3rd candidate for the day. Where? Right outside. Look, there he is. He's been standing there for the past hour or so, hesitating like that. You're right. Should we take a closer look? They only pretended to listen to her and never really tried to heed her warnings. Seeing the 3 girls huddle around and began whispering amongst each other, Ainz decided to ignore them completely. The owner of the shop often called the girls the 3 no-answer stooges, and at this very moment, she sort of understood where that sentiment was coming from. In the meantime, one of the girls with an arrogant expression studied the youth outside, before suddenly gasping and blinking her eyes several times. The guy outside was tall. His chest and biceps were sturdy. He possessed the type of a body that this girl preferred, the one where the muscles were tough yet agile and smooth without looking like a bodybuilder's. The girl's lips loosened in a foolish grin. Hi, Tilda, ya. His butt and his waist are so dreamy. Body, 10 points. She then turned her head towards another girl rubbing her chin like an arrogant old man. This girl had a really high standard and so far never had issued a single 9-pointer, never mind the perfect 10. It was not for nothing she was tasked with judging the face. He's okay. 8 points. I knew you'd do that. Knew what? I knew that you like guys with softer, more delicate looks. What do you mean? Look, that guy's face is manly enough, don't you think so? She nodded her head and smiled in satisfaction. Well, we might have the highest point scorer of all time if this keeps up. So how about his fashion sense? 10 points. No, 9. His shoes are a bit of mismatch. Oh, I get her, but what's up with you? You know, that top he's wearing, that one alone should cost a few $100,000. Hick. The girls gasped in surprise before one of them tilted her head. Wait a minute, didn't you say before that you hate name brands? No, it all depends on how you wear them, okay? It's not the same with you buying the most expensive stuff out there so you can show off, and someone carefully choosing and picking the right combination like him. Really? I can't tell. With him, well, I think either a pro coordinator got him to wear those, or he could be someone really interested in fashion. Even though he looks simple and plain on the outside, he can't fool my eyes. He's got a killer fashion sense. An evaluation that bordered on gushing praises was made. Let's see. 10 points, 8 and 9. 27 points. The history has been rewritten. The girls clapped their hands, and one of them spun around to look at Yu Xianhua, in the middle of concentrating on her job and not minding whether they were throwing a party or not. Ni, manager, it's a 27. Finally, we have a guy who can bring down your unwavering wall. Girls. Yu Xianhua's voice became heavy. There was a limit to her keeping quiet and ignoring them. She finally decided to teach these girls an unforgettable lesson today. I told you girls to stop this, didn't I? How would he feel if he hears you and your? Her words blurred, and the tone went up the moment her eyes drifted to the outside of the shop. Yu Xianhua froze up in the middle of her speech. But that was to be expected. The girls spoke of a guy who could bring down her wall, but that person turned out to be someone who had already done that once. Wait, I'll be back soon. Yu Xianhua took off her hat, grabbed her handbag, and hurriedly walked out from behind the counter. Ring. The doorbell issued a ring once more. Xiao Jihu stopped wasting time and momentarily held his breath. Yu Xianhua, still wearing the shop's uniform, was now standing in front of him. He felt his entire body, starting from the fingertips, freezing up after being subjected to her cold eyes. You even decided to show up at my place of work. Xianhua, follow me. I don't want to raise a fuss here. Yu Xianhua declared as so and began walking towards the back street without waiting for his consent. He had no choice but to follow after her. A short while later, Yu Xianhua stopped walking in front and turned around to face him. Xiao Jihu too reflexively stopped. She stared at him for a long time without saying a word. Xiao Jihu's head slowly lowered as if he was a criminal who knew his crimes. For some reason, he found it hard to look at her in the eye. There were only 6, maybe 7 steps between him and her. However, he sensed this wordless pressure that forbade him getting closer. The first person to break the silence was Yu Xianhua. First of all, take these. Xiao Jihu received his old bank card and the mobile phone, and his expression became slightly dazed. Thanks, I had forgotten about them. You forgot? No, you were just trying to create an excuse for yourself. You were being clever because I said I'll call the police. No, really. I did forget them. Stop. Fine, so why are you here today? Her voice remained cold. You left behind 2 million that night. Yeah. Now that you thought about it, you want that money after all, is that it? What, should I give it to you then? And no, that's not it. The thing is... Fine. I'll give it to you so. Yu Xianhua pulled 2 million cash from her handbag and thrust them out as if she was about to throw them away. It seemed that she had the cash ready just in case Xiao Jihu came to visit her one day. Take it and please leave right now. I need to go back to work. Her voice, filled with resentment and anger, tore into his body and began stabbing his innards like a dagger. Take this, and never appear before me ever again. She used to be a kind, loving girlfriend once upon a time. This is the last time I'll turn a blind eye. Don't ever think another cheap ploy like this will work in the future. It felt like she went past the point of despising him and into the realm of hating him now. Get a grip, get a grip. He stood there, his lips flapping helplessly for a while before he was able to squeeze out some words with considerable difficulty. I'm sorry for coming to see you during your work. There was something I have to say to you. But I thought that if it's not today, then I won't be able to so like I... Xiao Jihu began biting his lips. This was not it. This was wrong. Even he could tell this was gibberish. There were so many things he wanted to say to her, but his head became an untidy mess that was impossible to unravel. Slowly. He had to do it slowly. Today was the last day. Unlike with his family, he had to end it with Yu Xianhua today. Xiao Jihu made up his mind once more. Only then did some calmness return to his heart. I know you're really busy, but is it possible for us to talk? 10 minutes, 5, no, even 3 minutes will be fine. A short bout of silence later, Yu Xianhua retracted the hand carrying the money. He raised his gaze, a little more hopeful, but her eyes remained cold and critical. You want to talk? Yeah. Just how many more times do I have to tell you? If you want to talk to me, then go to the casino and apply for a ban there. I told you that I'd consider talking to you afterwards. I already have. Xiao Jihu quickly replied. Yu Xianhua's brows pricked up. What did you say? I've already applied for the lifetime ban. I did that in the morning before coming here. Ha! She let out a long sigh and stared at the sky. She closed her eyes and even clicked her tongue. It was as if she was dealing with someone beyond saving. Although she didn't say outright, "You are lying, aren't you?" Xiao Jihu thought that he could still hear those words. I'm telling you the truth. Please believe me. Yu Xianhua bit her lower lip after hearing him plead. She then pulled her phone out and switched it on. Hello, is this Siorak Land Counseling Office? Ah, hello there. I'm calling you today to ask you for a favor, to ask whether someone is banned from entering your premises. His name is Xiao Jihu. Seeing her confirm the truth by phoning the casino, he felt something bitter rising up in the back of his throat. Just how much pain and misery did he cause in the past for Yu Xianhua and his family to have memorized the casino's number? He's already on the list. Today, he himself. Yu Xianhua's hardened expression crumbled a little. Tea, thank you. She ended the call and stared at him with eyes full of distrust. You, she blinked her eyes quickly and wetted her dry lips. What did you want to talk about? Although it was only by a little, her voice sounded less chilly than before. This was the final chance, one he'd never have again. Xiao Jihu worked up his courage. I'm sorry, he bowed his waist as much as he could. His gaze was immediately filled with the view of the concrete. What did you say? I'm really, really sorry. His left hand held the envelope with money much, much tighter. I know that, I behaved like a son of a bitch. But still, I wanted to ask for your forgiveness. All those times I lied to you, disappointed you, made you go through hell, hurt you with shit, I said I wanted to apologize to you. As his words stuttered out, the corners of his eyes began to sting. Xiao Jihu gritted his teeth and endured. I'm sorry. He continued to beg for her forgiveness. He couldn't do one of those moving and simple but concise apologies. No, that'd be more like him insulting her dignity. The longer she remained quiet and the more he spoke, he felt his throat clam up. I used to. It was then. I used to hope that a day like today would happen. Her quiet but heavy voice entered his brain. He focused all of his being and listened. Of course, I reflected a lot too. I'm partially to blame for things turning out this way. I shouldn't have given you any money when you asked me for the first time. I should have listened to your mom and your dad back then. Xiao Jihu forgot what he wanted to say. I believed that you'd revert back to how you were someday, so I waited for you with that single ray of hope until now. No, wait, maybe this is me making more excuses. He felt like biting his own tongue as her calm, composed voice continued on. He wanted to shout out and say that it was all his fault. If she was scolding him and pouring out insults like his sister, then perhaps he could have endured and accepted her words. But having heard such a calm, composed voice, he simply didn't know what to do anymore. Yu Xianhua cautiously asked him, Those things you said, are they all true? Yes. You really came here to apologize to me. Nod, nod. Well then. Yu Xianhua relaxedly walked to where he was and extended her hand out. Then, take this. The moment he saw her pushing the wads of note to him, Xiao Jihu got to find out what the taste of despair was like. Xianhua, please take it if you are truly being honest. The emotions reflected in her eyes seemed a little complicated, but that was it. The reason for her to offer this money to him was quite clear, the severing of the final thread of connection they shared. If you truly thought like that, then Rather than words, please show me with your actions. Now the meaning behind her action changed. It was no longer take this and disappear from my sight, but now, please, don't make my life any harder. He realized then. There was a deep emotional chasm existing between them that could never be healed again. Sial Jehu's neck began trembling as the moment had finally arrived. He couldn't accept this money. The moment he did, then it'd be over for good. No, it was already over. He knew this, yet he still couldn't easily accept the money. Yu Xianhua let off a soft sigh, and in the end, she carefully tucked the money in his pocket. Thank you for applying to be banned. I'm sure your parents will be happy to hear that. And Wusiak Appa and Jinhee too. Yu Xianhua quietly lowered her own eyes after watching him stare at the ground all this time. I'm too tired. I'm a little upset, yes, and to be honest, I don't think I can sincerely forgive you in the state that I am in. However, if you have truly changed back then, I want you to press forward, work hard, and live well as if you were trying to show me all the progress you've made. If so, don't you think that one day we would be able to talk to each other with smiles on our faces? One day. Yu Xianhua had formed a thick bond with the Sial family when she was still a young child. So, it was rather obvious that he would run into her during family reunions and national holidays in the future. However, he knew, and she knew too, what she said wasn't meant to imply that they could try one more time. An unknown amount of time went by. You're right. Sial Jehu finally forced his head to rise up. His eyes remained fixed to the ground, however. Thank you for believing me. As ever, Yu Xianhua was a kind person. She treated him in a way that was incomparably kinder than when he went to see his family. It would have been hard for her to believe him after he had lied to her so many times already. Yet, she believed him once more. Not only that, by not using any harsh language and telling him stuff in a roundabout way, she was being considerate towards him too. Indeed, he was well aware of this, but this 2 million. I understand, I'll take it. I understand what you're trying to say. But his heart ached even more than before. Sial Jehu sniffed in deeply and began fidgeting with his right hand the money she gave him. He still had to give her back what was hers. But, at least take this. He raised his left arm, carrying the envelope with money, and opened his left palm. Then, She formed an expression of confusion and looked down at his hand. What? Then, her eyes that remained composed until now widened in surprise. Her mouth opened in a daze. He could immediately tell that she couldn't believe what was happening. She even took a step back in shock. At this rate, she looked like she'd refuse the money, just like how his siblings did. So he reached out and grabbed her hand to place the envelope there. Her skin felt so soft, so much so that he never wanted to let go. I should go. However, he could only be satisfied with holding her hand for this short moment. He did his best to force out a smile. Meanwhile, Yu Xianhua still looked stunned. But how? I won't appear before you again, so, take care of yourself. Sial Jehu turned around and ran out of the street. He began running hard as this unbearable emotion filled him up. Everything seemed to happen so fast. Yu Xianhua belatedly recovered her wits and instinctively confirmed the contents of the envelope. It was packed full of bills with the images of Shin Samedang. She gasped out in shock one more time. No wait, what? Yu Xianhua was deeply mired in confusion for a while before she hurriedly switched her phone on. Wusiak Appa, yes, by any chance, he did come when, her voice continued to grow louder, 55 million won. Yeah. Not only that, he brought back Jinhee's car and bought her a new laptop. But that doesn't make sense. Where did he get that money from? I don't know. He assured me that he didn't earn it through gambling, but... Right, I know. Remember that day when he came to borrow money from you? I called the Siorak land to confirm, and they said the last time he was there, it was Thursday, March 16th. That means he really didn't get that money through gambling. What was the date again? March 16th. In any case, he said the money was from an honest source. But he said he was busy and had to go. I guess he went to see you, March 16th. No, it can't be. Yu Xianhua was no longer listening to Sial Wusiak's voice. No, wait. It can't be. The envelope fell on the ground and the money spilled out. However, Yu Xian didn't even take a second look at that and ran out of the street herself. "Jihu!" She looked around her and called out desperately. "Xiao Jihu?" Unfortunately, Xiao Jihu's back could not be seen anymore. Chapter 44, the places he needs to be. Xiao Jihu couldn't remember how he got back to his room. He staggered up the stairs and opened the front door with an emotionless face. Underneath, the window dyed in an orangey hue. The light of dusk drew a lengthy shadow and cast a shadow over his aged laptop. Xiao Jihu leaned against the wall and closed his laptop shut. He suddenly felt like a fool, thinking back to when he was busy calculating all those sums. Just a little bit. It'd be a lie if he wasn't just a tiny little bit expectant. However, the gap between reality and his imaginations proved to be too wide for him to bridge. The reality was cold and harsh, as if it occupied the opposite end of the scale from his imagination. His old habit reared its head. He pulled out a cigarette and began puffing out blue smoke. Cough, cough. His throat felt scratchy. His eyes stung. Maybe because of that, the tears he'd been holding back began streaming down. "You think I'll fall for your lies again?" How could he resent anyone? Horse racing, or sports betting, or how could he blame anyone? "Please take it if you are truly being honest." The view of the entire world seemed to have turned 90 degrees. His temple hit the floor, and Xiao Jihu stared at the tilted room in a silent daze. His head was too chaotic to feel the pain. His breathing, too, was unsteady. Everything felt wrong. It was as if everything was telling him that he shouldn't be here. "I have no place left here." The moment this thought entered his head, his fuzzy, unfocused eyes regained some of the lost clarity. He did find a place he could go not too long ago, didn't he? Paradise. Indeed, if it was that place. His hand rummaged through his pockets until he found a small slip of paper. For a while, he fidgeted around with it. He wanted to rip it up right away, but he was still waiting for a certain woman to give him a call first. Now that he took a look at himself, his condition wasn't so good as well. Xiao Jihu's body shuddered from the sudden coldness rushing into his bones. He figured that he'd feel better after getting some sleep. Sniff. He sniffed slightly as he crawled on the floor and dug underneath the worn blankets. Within this cold room, only the deathly stillness kept him company. "I'm lonely." He pulled the blanket over his head and quietly closed his eyes. On the other hand, "The number you have dialed is not available at present. Please leave your message after the beep." And why is this guy not picking up his phone? Kim Hannah angrily switched her phone off and frowned in unhappiness. Could he have dined and dashed? No, he didn't look that stupid to begin with. She licked her lips and contemplated for a little while longer before picking up her handbag to leave her residence. "You think I won't be able to find you because you hid yourself?" Kim Hannah arrived outside his house. She pressed the doorbell and knocked on the door, but the whole place was eerily quiet. "He's not home." Kim Hannah closed her eyes and concentrated. She then clearly sensed his aura coming from the inside. Her expressions crumpled in an instant. "Knock, knock." "Hey, open the door." "I know you're in there." "Xiao Jihu?" Kim Hannah's voice rose up as she knocked on the door. She even began chewing on her lower lip. Oh, so he was playing hard to get, was that it? Seething with anger, she grabbed the doorknob and turned it hard. Maybe I shouldn't have given him the money. But then, the door opened up without offering any resistance. It was open all this time. Rather than surprised, she suddenly felt foolish for wasting the last 5 minutes standing outside the door while doing stupid little things. Kim Hannah entered while looking around, only to cover her nose in a hurry as nausea viciously assaulted her. A truly disgusting odor formed from the combination of stale cigarettes, rotting food, clothes that hadn't been washed in ages, as well as other unidentifiable smell, attacked her senses. When she took a look around the state of the room, she found it to be a truly disgusting sight to behold. The cigarette butts piling up high atop a plate reminded her of a hedgehog, for instance. Kim Hannah felt an urge to vomit rush in, so she quickly made her way to the kitchen sink, only for her eyes to open even wider in shock. Blurg. In the end, she began retching. For someone like her who obsessed over her hygiene like a maniac, this room was a trash pit that made her feel disgusted and uncomfortable. Blurg, bleerg. She continued to retch several times more, before shifting her tearful eyes to look behind her. Only then did she spot Seol Jihu sleeping on the floor with a blanket covering his entire body. "Why, you crazy bastard?" Kim Hannah strode angrily to where he was. "Hey, wake up!" She used the tip of her feet to push the blanket off, but froze still afterwards. "Ooh, ooh, ooh." She heard him moaning out in pain. He was breathing with much difficulty as well. His hair was soaked with sweat and clung to his scalp, and she spotted large sweat drops on his neck, too. What on earth? Kim Hannah's anger cooled down in an instant. She squatted down and placed her palm on his forehead and felt his temperature. He was boiling hot. She had no idea that he was sick, so she felt foolish and apologetic for suspecting him. "Idiot, how can you not get sick when sleeping in a room like this?" She muttered out in defeat and quietly sighed out. She took another sweeping look at the place and then shook her head. You were fine back in paradise, but why are you like this on Earth?" She spoke to herself as if she couldn't help it and stood back up. "Even if it's cold, endure it for a while. Let me start by getting some fresh air in here. I might also get sick from this room if I don't do something right now." She proceeded to fling open the window as wide as it could be opened and rolled up both her sleeves. As if she was getting ready to exert some effort after a long while of not doing so, she stretched her back and loosened her neck muscles. "Okay, let's see. Where should I get started first?" Seol Jihu had a dream. It was a kind of a dream that he hadn't had in a long time, but it was a good one. Yu Seonhwa came to see him and began nursing him. She even scolded him for the messy state of his room. She dragged him to the corner and then began cleaning the mess. While the washing machine did its thing, she went out and bought stuff like dishwashing soap, air freshener, and some other cleaning products. She washed his clothes, then tidied up the kitchen, washed all the dirty dishes, threw away the rotting rubbish, cleaned out the fridge, mopped the floor, wiped the windows clean, and even got around to cleaning the bathroom. She spent the next several hours on completely transforming his entire residence. Then, saying she was hungry, she cooked ramen. Seeing her stand in the kitchen with her ponytail gently swaying about, Seol Jihu felt warm and fuzzy inside. It was as if he had gone back in time, back to when everything was okay. If there was one thing he couldn't quite understand, then that would be her wearing a business suit. Why wasn't she in her uniform? Yu Seonhwa had never once wore a business suit until now. Suddenly his nose picked up on the spicy but delicious smell. Saliva began pooling on the tip of his tongue. Seol Jihu swallowed his saliva as the sleepiness left him, and he blinked his eyes several times. It wasn't a dream. He quickly raised his upper body. "Oh, will you look at this guy?" A rather particular prim tone of voice entered his ears. Kim Hannah narrowed her eyes and stared at him while carrying the tray with ramen on it. "You sure can smell food like a sniffer dog, can't you? Kim Hannah, if you're up, then come and have some. What are you doing here?" "I told you, didn't I? If you don't answer my call, then I'd come barging into your place." Kim Hannah replied matter-of-factly. Seol Jihu dazedly surveyed his surroundings, and his jaw nearly hit the floor after realizing that his trash pit room had been transformed into spotless living quarters. Was my place this spacious? He spotted plates neatly arranged on the shelves, and the floor seemed to glisten like marble. There was an unfamiliar but nice scent permeating in the air, too. This place was well past the level of being a nice place to be in and straight into the territory of my sweet home. "You thinking of starting a new career?" "What are you even talking about?" Kim Hannah sourly retorted to his question. Seol Jihu massaged his forehead. "So it was you." He thought it was Yu Seonhwa, though. "That's right, you idiot. Do you know how many trash bags I—" "Wait a minute. What do you sound disappointed?" "And no way, you're mistaken. I'm grateful, really." He flinched and quickly denied it while waving his hands around. Kim Hannah snorted once. "That's right. You better be grateful. How can you even think about sleeping in a place like this? It was probably full of germs and stuff." She shuddered as if just imagining it gave her the chills and put the tray down on the small table. She then sneaked a glance at him. "You don't want." "I cooked 2 packets, you know." Warm steam invitingly rose up from the pot, and after a pair of wooden chopsticks were placed before him, there was no way he could refuse now. And when he thought about it, he hadn't eaten anything since the morning. Indeed, he was feeling hungry. So he decided to fix that first before thinking about anything else. Slurp. It's good. The noodles were perfectly chewy, and the soup itself was on the right side of being spicy, with the chopped spring onion bits adding a layer of refreshing aftertaste as well. Kim Hannah began giggling after seeing the youth focus on wordlessly hoovering up the ramen. You like it? Yeah. Well, I've got some skills when it comes to making ramen. Anyways, enjoy yourself. Okay, thanks. The two of them concentrated on the meal at hand for a while. And sure enough, the noodles were finished pretty quickly. It's not really enough for both of us, right? Kim Hannah licked her lips, and with an unsatisfied face, she looked at Seol Jihu enjoying the spoonful of the ramen soup. How about some rice to go with the soup? Yeah, that sounds. But there's no. I've already bought some instant rice. I got them when I went out to buy extra trash bags, you see. Kim Hannah went to the kitchen and brought out packets of instant rice. She must have had them warmed in the convenience store because they were rather cold to his touch. They dumped the rice into the ramen soup and shared the rest of the meal among themselves. Once his stomach was full, he felt sated and a bit sleepy as well. Even though he just woke up, his eyelids felt like they weighed thousands of tons. Seeing him like this, Kim Hannah smirked. You aren't a kid anymore, but you're getting sleepy because you're full? She then took the tray with the empty dishes away before bringing a bag of medicine. Hey, let me do that. Don't bother. You're still sick, you know. I bought some medication, so take those and rest up. We'll talk tomorrow. Seol Jihu closed his mouth. The thing he hated the most was needles, and the thing he hated the second most was taking medication. It might have something to do with childhood trauma. Kim Hannah hummed as she washed the dishes, only to get royally ticked off when she found out that he didn't even bother to take a single medication. She forced him to take some pills, and after that, she said she'd talk to him tomorrow, then turned around to leave. It was getting late, and she also needed to get some rest, too. I'll be going now. Get some rest, okay? And don't you dare not answer my call again. Just as she was about to leave, she felt him suddenly grab her hand. Kim Hannah. What? Don't go, please. What did you say? Kim Hannah couldn't help but flinch after hearing his pleading tone of voice. Well, it was already in the middle of the night, so a thought that said perhaps coming here was a mistake entered her head. Hey! Kim Hannah turned around to face him and firmly stated her position. You're an invited, and I'm your inviter. I know. If you know, then you shouldn't behave like this. Don't you think you're being a bit inconsiderate here? Do I look that easy to you? She began, sounding quite a bit pissed off. Seol Jihu stared at with his eyes blinking non-stop as if to show he had no idea what she was on about before his tired voice left his mouth. I want to go back. HM? Right now, I want to go back. It was Kim Hannah's turn to blink her eyes. Her neck skin reddened up from embarrassment only for a brief moment. The moment she confirmed the strange fervor in the youth's eyes. Let's go, right now. I mean, we have the means, right? Her own eyes narrowed to a slit. No way can it be. As a matter of fact, she had been feeling that something odd was up. She also found it strange that the youth was unusually quiet during the mealtime. What she initially worried about was Seol Jihu not wanting to go back to paradise after coming back to Earth. However, the truth turned out to be the exact opposite of that. Not even one full day had passed, yet Seol Jihu wanted to go back to paradise already. The most convincing evidence was his complexion, which was now full of vigor as soon as he mentioned going back. She felt that the way he held her hand was like someone dearly holding onto the sole remaining lifeline. Kim Hannah began thinking that this wasn't right, that this was dangerous. Every now and then, one would find people like this, people who were seduced by the charms of the lost paradise and discarded their lives here on Earth. It was kinda like putting the horse before the cart. Such earthlings would lose their lives pretty earlier on, 10 times out of 10. They would get drunk on the adrenaline provided by the battles of paradise and end up seeking out progressively more dangerous assignments. Other earthlings called these kinds of people the paradise junkies. Normally, Kim Hannah would have welcomed his desire to return to paradise, but Seol Jihu wasn't a simple contracted, nor was he a disposable pawn that could be thrown away after being used once or twice. No, he was an earthling that could become her trustworthy support and an important partner in the future. Indeed, he was more like a rough gemstone she needed to nurture very carefully. She wanted Seol Jihu to balance both of his lives here as well as over there. She definitely didn't want to see him get addicted to paradise. Besides, he only went there once, and he spent most of his time inside the neutral zone. It was rare to see someone who wanted to return to paradise only after experiencing so little. Something must have happened here. Remembering Seol Jihu's past, she could think of a couple of things that might have happened. You can't. Kim Hannah firmly refused him. But why not? At the bare minimum, you have to finalize the contract first. Give it to me. Let me sign it right now. You think that's the end just because you signed it? I've got lots of things to say to you, and besides, aren't you curious about some things too? What about your future plans? I'll figure it out once I get there. Seol Jihu's fervor cooled down a lot after hearing her angry voice. In any case, you can't. I want to get some sleep too. Do you have any idea how tired I am trying to tidy this place up? Seol Jihu forgot what he wanted to say now, his expression one of apology. Just get some sleep. You look like you're about to fall asleep at any second anyways. Plus, when it's time for us to go be ack, I'll make you go even if you don't want to. Okay. In the end, Seol Jihu waved a white flag. A short while later, the light of the room turned off. A complicated expression formed on Kim Hannah's face as she watched the sleeping Seol Jihu and his steady breathing. She stood at the front entrance and deliberated for a while before she settled down on a spot a bit of distance away from him. She draped the jacket around her like a duvet. She was worried about him running off to paradise without her knowing. Her sharp senses would snap her out of sleep even if there was a minute disturbance, so she trusted that and decided to stay. As his protector, she had to prevent him from escaping into paradise at all costs. Really now, what a troublesome guy to look after. Kim Hannah stared at him for a long while before closing her eyes as a yawn left her mouth. Kim Hannah woke up first in the early dawn, confirmed that Seol Jihu was still asleep, and quietly took a shower. She originally planned to lightly wash up, but had shed way too much sweat the day before cleaning this pigsty of a room, so it couldn't be helped. She didn't want to wake him, so she took her clothes inside the bathroom with her. But then, the noises of the water must have woken him anyways. By the time she got out, Seol Jihu was sitting up while rubbing his eyes. The morning sun had already risen past the horizon when he finished washing up as well. She then dragged the youth out of his house and took him to a small diner located in some forgotten back street, so they could have some breakfast. While waiting for the food to arrive, she demanded that he tell her everything that had happened yesterday. Seol Jihu wasn't really keen on revealing them, but still told her everything. After hearing his story, her reactions were quite dramatic, to say the least. What? You spent over 100 million yesterday. How can you be that stupid? Are you even the same person? Are you even that first-ranked survivor? Hey you, I told you to think about the difference in the time, didn't I? What would they think when a gambling addict like yourself showed up after a month of silence with 5 to 60 million in tow, claiming to have given up on gambling completely out of the blue? Ah! Kim Hannah was this close to losing her SHT, and she nearly jumped up from her seat. She thought that he'd use the cash wisely. That was why she deposited some in his account to begin with. A guy who was so thoughtful and capable of solving all those difficult tasks quite easily back in paradise did a 180 as soon as he returned to Earth. She could hardly believe how dumb he was. You dumb idiot. You really went and did it. Kim Hannah massaged her neck as she wallowed in the pits of despair. It's not like I don't understand where you're coming from, okay? But, in that case, you should have just shown up with 2 to 30 million first or something. You need to gradually mend your old ties by apologizing first, saying you've quit gambling for good, that you'd work hard to repay them, but that you're too busy so you'll call them later on, etc., etc. What? You thought you could get back on their good grace in one shot? Your relationships broke down years ago, remember? Her continuous stream of correct opinions caused Seol Jihu to wordlessly scratch the back of his head. Even if he had 10 mouths, he'd still have no excuses to offer right now. Ha. Kim Hannah spat out lengthy groans over and over again before glaring at him. This can't go on. Although you haven't signed the contract yet, as soon as you do, I'm going to invoke the Protector's privilege. The Protector's privilege? You want to make it right with your family, correct? Sial Jihu nodded his head as if that was obvious. I'm not planning to interfere with how you live your private life, but I'll be intervening in this matter, okay? The food arrived then, so Kim Hannah's dissatisfaction had to pause for a while. Let's eat. We'll talk while we eat. Kim Hannah scooped some soup up with her spoon and continued on. Now, listen. Among my subordinates, there is this guy who went there when he was just a university student. He did okay, carved himself a nice little career, became famous, and then got scouted by Sinyang in the end. He even got married not too long ago, too. You even get married in that side. Sure, there are some people who do, but that's not what I'm saying. Kim Hannah waved her hand around to emphasize the fact that it wasn't what she wanted to talk about. Anyways. He married a girl who's not involved with that world, know what I mean? So what do you think happened? I wonder. Isn't it a bit, dangerous? He could get discovered, right? You think so? You see, his actual life is going pretty nicely. He comes to work in the mornings and transfer to that side, spends a couple of days there and comes back. But it's only the late afternoon over here. If he were to get delayed that side, then he would simply tell her that he'd been putting in some overtime. If he needs some extra time that side, then he just tells her that he's going on a business trip. But his wife could show up at the company, right? Kim Hannah shrugged her shoulders. So, what's the problem? We just have to show her husband working at the office. What if she shows up unannounced, or there's an emergency? Even those are not a problem. If something happens to his household or his family, the company will be notified immediately. We'll tell her that he's working outside the offices, and at the same time, one of our guys will transfer to the other side and bring him back. You really are thorough in managing your people, aren't you? That's the power of my company. And well, that's one of the reasons why I will be looking after you, too. Sial Jihu nodded his head and agreed with her. The tone of Kim Hannah's voice was a bit combative, but he didn't mind hearing her out. Rather than her interfering, it sounded more like she was going to help him out instead. In any case, what you're saying is that you'll invoke this privilege of the Protector, right? That's right. Actually, I don't even really need to invoke the privilege in the first place. This is one of the responsibilities people like me, who were granted the rights to scout, must carry out. Rights to scout? That's right. You think the rights are granted for free to us. Naturally, we have the responsibilities and duties to perform. Kim Hannah began munching on the rolls of kimbap before going oops after seeing the youth's vacant expression. Since he was so outstandingly capable back in paradise, she would sometimes think that he had figured most things out by himself already and gloss over some stuff. Even if it's called rights, it's not that impressive. It's like, we can use the stamps and get to figure out whether you're involved with that world or not that much, I guess. You can do that, of course. Without such a thing, why would I have believed you back then? Just because you swore in your mother's name or something. Okay, so how do you tell then? Give me your hand. Sial Jihu opened his right palm and presented it to her, but she shook her head. Not your right hand, the hand where I planted that stamp. Sial Jihu opened his left palm and tilted his head. From his perspective, it was just a hand with nothing on it, and he couldn't see anything special there. However, it must have been different to Kim Hannah because she was nodding her head rather sagely. Yeah, I can see it pretty clearly now. It must be that vivid because you're a gold mark. You can see something on my hand? Yup. There are 3 ways to distinguish those who are involved with that world and those who are not. She licked the chopstick and unfurled her index, middle, and ring fingers. Firstly, you recognize a person's face. Even you can do this. Secondly, you can take a look at the other's marking. But the drawback to this method is, you don't know exactly where the marking might be. Sometimes you might find it in some weird place, you know? Sial Jihu became slightly curious what those weird places could be. The last one is to sense the aura. The aura? There's this distinctive aura emitted from the marks. You have to be close to the mark and concentrate hard to feel it, though. Sial Jihu became deeply intrigued as they began discussing a topic related to paradise. I got sidetracked. Anyways, Kim Hannah clicked her tongue and pulled out the contract as well as a pen from her inner pocket. My point is this. I want you to balance your life over here as well as the one over there, just like that subordinate I told you about. Listen. I've been living on that side for far longer than you have. I also got to meet a lot more people than you. Hell, I'm someone who seduces others into entering that place. Suddenly, the tone of her voice became lower in the middle of her speech. I'll be honest with you here. Ever since I began as a broker, I've never imagined that I'd say these words out aloud. Kim Hannah took a big gulp of water, adjusted her glasses, and continued. I'm convinced after seeing how you acted last night. You may not need it when you're on the other side, but when you're here, you need strict management. More importantly, I won't sit back and watch the man I invited get addicted to that side and flounder around like a fool. Got that? Kim Hannah spoke up to here and placed the contract in front of Seol Jihu. If you understand me and feel confident that you can do this, then sign the contract. Seol Jihu remained quiet before picking up the pen, and just as he pulled the contract in closer, don't forget, her voice was sharp. The place you need to be is here. Chapter 45. To paradise once more, Seol Jihu carefully checked out the contract from Gyula. Not one word had been changed from when he first read it. Of course, judging from the personality she displayed until now, Kim Hannah wouldn't try to pull a fast one like that. Seol Jihu finished scanning the contract and signed on the dotted line. As he returned the contract to her, he spoke. Now that I've signed the contract, I want to ask you about something. Don't you work for Sinyoung? Yeah, I do. Why did you say those things back then? Wouldn't it be more advantageous for you if I ended up signing with them? Kim Hannah carefully but professionally folded the contract and hid it inside her jacket before cocking an eyebrow. I was wondering why you haven't asked me that yet. But shouldn't you have asked that question before signing the contract? What if you have a change of mind after hearing what I have to say? You'd have said things in such a way to make sure that I don't change my mind anyway. Well, I just wanted to hear your honest words without worrying about how you'd change the story. You seem to get smarter when it comes to things like this, huh? Kim Hannah shot him a prim glare and took off her glasses. She even put the spoon down and began lightly tapping the table with her index finger. Okay, fine. It's a long story, but since you want to hear it, I'll tell you. Do you know what the current situation is like for Sinyoung? Seol Jihu was about to ask. Aren't they the biggest organization in paradise? But held back. The way she asked her question, it sounded like something pretty serious was going on here. They are stuck between a rock and a hard place, going nowhere. Kim Hannah rested her chin on the back of her hand and gazed at the outside of the diner with half-closed eyes. Her face, as reflected on the glass, looked rather bitter. Their situation is really complicated right now. Sinyoung lost their most powerful combat force, and they are also losing their justification for being there. It's not as if their foundation has become weak enough to be shaken around, but on the flip side, they can't deny that they have indeed been weakened considerably compared to the past. I'm curious, but have you read The Romance of the Three Kingdoms before? She came out of nowhere with that one, but Seol still nodded his head. Cao Cao succeeded in securing the young emperor, thereby creating the firm foundation for himself to control the empire, right? Sinyoung did something similar. A year ago, no, wait. 3 years ago in that place's time flow, the very first rebellion happened within the human alliance. Kim Hannah lowered her voice and continued on. To be more specific, a certain kingdom wanted the Earthlings to become more proactive, and they formed an alliance of sorts with other like-minded kingdoms and tried a method that was a bit more forceful than before. As a result, several organizations rebelled openly against their unreasonable demands. An entire region rose up to resist this push, so surely you can imagine how big of a rebellion it was. A region? Which one? The South. The resistance movement formed around the South as its center. And in the end, a war broke out. Those guys were defeated. In the blink and pushed to the brink. In the middle of her speech, Kim Hannah went. She forgot about the pact to never to speak about the secrets of paradise and ended up doing precisely that. Seol Jihu waved his hands around briefly to show her it was fine. Did every Earthling participate in the rebellion? No, some participated, but there were some who supported the royal families. However, most were neutral. Kim Hannah then placed her hand on her chest. It was right around then. Sinyoung had remained neutral until that time, but they declared their support of the royal family and entered the fray. She then raised two of her fingers. There were two reasons Sinyoung decided to intervene. The first thing was, of course, for profit. And secondly, they were confident in winning. As if she was feeling thirsty, Kim Hannah took large gulps of the cold water. Futilda. Of course, even Sinyoung didn't possess the military might to subdue a rebellion of that size by themselves. However, even though they were small in number, there were some Earthlings who supported the royal families, so they joined in. Sinyoung also persuaded their allies to participate as well. Then, using those events as the pivotal point, they began persuading other neutral organizations into participating. And most importantly, to signify the importance of what she was about to say, her expression hardened noticeably. They let loose a single unique rancor into the battlefield. To be acknowledged as a unique rancor in Paradise, one had to be level 7 or above. Not everyone could level up that high, and there were only a handful of such individuals in the whole of Paradise. His name is Sung Shihyun. Sung Shihyun, Seol Jihu repeated that name inwardly. He had heard of this name before. From the way she had crossed her arms against her chest, it seemed that Kim Hannah wasn't happy about something there. Sinyoung was encouraged by Sung Shihyun's combat prowess, and through him, they were able to achieve a sweeping victory against the rebellion. The royal families wished to push forward with the momentum and even destroy the rebellion's headquarters, but Sinyoung didn't want that. No, they came up with a nice-sounding pretext of giving the other side a chance, saying that the continuous fight between humans would only weaken the influence of mankind on the planet. So they went ahead with ceasefire negotiations. No matter how good a pretext sounded, it'd always remain as a pretext. It meant that Sinyoung had already started their machinations on the political landscape of Paradise well before the negotiations began. In the end, the royal families promised to allow complete freedom of the southern region under the condition that all the remaining rebels were relocated there. Isn't that the same thing as the rebels ultimately getting what they wanted in the first place? If you look at the result only, sure. But you could also say that they were exiled there too. I'm sure you've heard by now that the South is always mired in warfare, right? Seol Jihu had heard the condensed version before that there were currently 4 different species calling Paradise their home, and that the humans were the weakest of them. The South is pretty much the front lines of the war. In other words, it's the most dangerous area. Ah. Seol Jihu let out a gasp of shock. He now understood who had gained the most out of the rebellion from those 2 sentences she uttered out. That's right. It's the same thing as Sinyoung sending all their rival influences down to the south to act as their meat shield. And thanks to that, Sinyoung got to increase their political clout back in the capital without a single worry. And they even had the royal family in their back pocket, so what did they have to fear now, right? Kim Hannah spoke the last sentence with a slight hint of disdain before slowly leaning her back against the chair. However, no flower blooms forever. Not everything was plain sailing for them, you see. About 2 years ago in the flow of time that side, a new problem occurred. One that nobody saw coming. A problem, you say? Sung Shihyun. It was that name again. Well, him, even I can't figure it out why he did what he did. Some say he had a falling out with Sinyoung's management, and others say the royal family made their move after getting worried about Sinyoung's growing influence. Or maybe Sung Shihyun's own greed got the better of him. Just what kind of a person is this Sung Shihyun, anyway? I can't speak about his identity here, but know this, he isn't a nice guy. His abilities are indeed a real deal, but I remember him being incredibly arrogant, and that he used to do whatever he felt like. What's important is that he went ahead with a certain military expedition against others' wishes, spectacularly failed that, and went missing ever since. He's dead. That's the thing no one knows. Just because he's dead on that side, that doesn't mean he's dead this side too. However, he's completely disappeared without a trace over that side and over here too. Seol Jihu agreed with the notion that it sounded rather bizarre and opened his mouth to speak. I guess that with Sung Shihyun going missing, Sinyoung got affected pretty badly, right? But, of course, that guy was what you'd call an irregular. Kim Hannah nodded her head. No matter which organization, there is a limit to how much manpower you can mobilize at once for individual requests and missions. The reason Sinyoung was able to grow at an explosive rate was because of the full support from the royal family. Of course, Sinyoung had to listen to the royal family's demands in return, and the nearly impossible missions or difficult tasks were taken care of by Sung Shihyun. However, with the disappearance of that Sung Shihyun, it became harder to carry out the demanding tasks set out by the royal families. And so, the foundation Sinyoung relied on to grow more influential and wealthy began to rock unsteadily. Understanding as such, Seol Jihu's eyes narrowed to a slit. I think I can understand where the rebellion was coming from. Just how ridiculous were the demands made by the royal family? I get where they are coming from, but wouldn't you normally make the request after seeing what the current situation is like? Right. That's how you'd normally do that, but for some reason, Kim Hannah blurred the ends of her words. It was as if she was trying to be vague about something. In any case, that's where this story ends. Actually, this isn't something you should be aware of right now. But I should answer that question you asked me earlier. Kim Hannah coughed to clear her throat and stared straight at Seol Jihu. After the powerful combat potential called Sung Shihyun became missing, Sinyoung became incredibly busy. They have way too many business interests to look after, and they have to keep an eye on the royal family too. Even I'm supposed to handle 8 different assignments right now. 8? Seol Jihu could only leak out a hollow chuckle. He even thought whether it was fine for her to be here or not. And then, in the midst of this madness, a new irregular has appeared. Of course that's you. The paths you walked, the things you've done and achieved, they are remarkably similar to Sung Shihyun's. Well, if you are Sinyoung, how would you respond? I'll probably try to scout me. Obviously. But having lost Sung Shihyun once, they would make sure they are prepared this time. You felt it too when you took a look at their contract, right? Every single clause promising to support you were traps that would have shackled you real good. Sure, they would help you get stronger, but they will also turn you into a puppet that only moved according to Sinyoung's wishes. He had been expecting something like that already, but now that he heard the truth straight from her, it certainly felt a bit different than before. Kinda like his body was shuddering or something. But why me? If I were to be honest, you're currently a juicy prey waiting to be devoured. Seol Jihu stared blankly at Kim Hannah. He understood now why he shouldn't sign up with Sinyoung, but her helping him out was a different matter altogether. At the end of the day, Kim Hannah still worked for Sinyoung after all. And finally, the reason I'm helping you like this. She locked her fingers. Well, you can criticize me for being materialistic if you want. That gold stamp was my private property. And besides, I didn't want others to steal you from me. Steal? Amen. If I coerced you into joining Sinyoung, then sure, they would have praised me for it. They'll promote me as my reward, too. But that would be all right. The moment you join the company, the higher-ups would do anything to possess you. And since I don't have any power, you'll end up being taken from me. Kim Hannah then raised both her hands in a slight shrug. If that was the case, then wouldn't it be much more profitable for me if you didn't join and grow stronger outside the company? Ch more, right? You grow powerful and strong and start supporting me, then I'd get to have a proper say within Sinyoung. You know what I mean? You hoo. That's how it is. That's right. I raised this guy, he's friendly with me, he only deals with me, etc., etc. You want to ask this guy for a request, then talk to me first. Q tilde. Kim Hannah's neck shrunk back slightly, and her shoulders started to tremble a little as if the thought alone made her very excited. Now that he heard her story, he kind of agreed with her there. However, the rosy future of her dreams could only take place on the condition that Seol Jihu grew up to become someone with great power. Honestly, he felt burdened by her expectations. I think you're thinking too highly of me. Seeing the youth smile awkwardly, Kim Hannah pouted slightly. Indeed. You do make me worried from how you acted this side, you know? She began giggling, and that brought out a soft but genuine smile from him as well. The two of them continued on with their breakfast and chatted about what they needed to do for their happy future on the other side. Don't think too hard about this. As they left the diner and headed back to his place, Seol Jihu fell into deep thought. So Kim Hana offered a bit of advice. You're still only level 1. No one is expecting you to do something incredible. So you should just focus on getting used to life on that side for the next couple of years. You can even think of it as playing a game. Playing a game? Right. Like video games, you log in when you have a bit of free time, kinda like that. Of course, it'd be your main line of work, though. Seol Jihu recalled hearing something similar to this before. My ass. In the end, this is all just a fucking game, man. A game. And you're supposed to enjoy playing games, but unlike when Kang Seok said those things, Seol Jihu didn't feel disgusted this time. No, he thought that it wouldn't be so bad to view this whole thing just as Kim Hana had said. Everyone had different ways to enjoy themselves, after all. As they walked back to his place, they encountered a middle-aged woman busy sorting through the trash in front of the building where he lived. She was a cleaning lady he had seen a few times while he went about his business in the past. The woman was mouthing off her discontent while trying to sort out the mountainous pile of trash. She then spotted the youth and the glasses-wearing woman and tilted her head a little. Seol Jihu felt guilty about all the crap there, so he quickly bowed to her and ran inside his room. After entering his home, they began preparing themselves to return to paradise. This thing, is it fine to leave it behind here? Do what you feel like. After taking out all the prohibited items, Kim Hana produced a small slip of paper from her pocket. Well then, it's finally time for us to head back to paradise you so desperately wanted to return to. Seol Jihu smirked and pulled his own slip of paper out. It was here that Kim Hana spoke to him one more time. I'm asking this for your own good, but you know what you need to do once we go back there, right? Yes, I know. Okay, let's go then. Rip. Along with the noise of the paper being torn, a circular light appeared in the empty air. Kim Hana was swallowed up by this light from her head down to her feet and disappeared from sight in an instant. Seol Jihu observed this with great curiosity before deciding to rip his own paper, but then he stopped. He spotted his smartphone, discarded to the corner of the room. After Yu Seonhwa gave it back to him, he didn't even get around to charging it, so it was currently turned off. The place I need to be. He felt a sudden urge to confirm something. If he switched that phone on, wouldn't calls from his family or Yu Seonhwa arrive? It didn't take too long for him to realize how embarrassingly unrealistic that wish was. There's no way they'd contact me anyway. Seol Jihu let off a lengthy sigh before ripping the transfer paper in half. Ehyu, why is there so much trash here? HM. The middle-aged woman continued to complain to herself as she sorted out the trash. It was then that she sensed the presence of someone behind her. She turned around to take a look. A beautiful woman with a pretty dress was standing there while holding an envelope in one hand. She must have come here the first thing in the morning because her hair was still damp. When their gazes met, the beautiful woman politely greeted her. Hello there, Auntie. Egu, hello to you too, it's been a while. Wait, I did see you for a little bit yesterday, so it's not a while, is it? The middle-aged woman greeted the young woman warmly as if they were familiar with each other. Besides that, you also came today? I thought you decided to not to come here anymore. Yes, I have a business here today. Yu Seonhwa displayed an uneasy smile. By any chance, have you seen the guy who stays in room 405? Ah, him? Yes, I've seen him. A light gleamed in Yu Seonhwa's eyes. Is he home? Well, maybe around 30 minutes after you left yesterday, 1 hour anyways. He came home around that time after you left. I want to tell him that you stopped by, but he seemed so tired and troubled so. Yu Seonhwa's mouth hung open a little. Yesterday, after Seol Jihu ran off, she chased after him right away. There was something she just had to confirm. So she paid the taxi driver extra just to get to Seol Jihu's place as soon as possible. The problem was that he hadn't come back home. She waited for a long time, yet he didn't show up. If she knew he'd come so soon afterwards, then she would have waited here. She couldn't have guessed that he'd come home after she left. He must have wandered around the streets aimlessly before stumbling back home somehow. I think he's in there now. But what should I do? Agu! What's wrong? It's something a bit scandalous for me to say, but I wonder if it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. Please feel free to speak. I saw him enter not too long ago, but some pretty lady was sticking very close to him, you see. Pardon? As soon as she spotted Yu Xian's facial expression, the cleaning lady hurriedly added a few more words. I'm not sure what's going on. That lady borrowed some cleaning equipment last night, saying that she's going to clean out room 405. She was speaking in such a curt and straightforward manner, even though she looks like a fox. All this trash, it's from that room, you know. Did I overstep my boundaries? No, not at all. Yu Xian said her goodbyes and hurriedly entered the building. She quickly ran up the stairs. She wasn't feeling something as petty as jealousy. It was definitely not lingering attachment either, however. As she listened to the story from the cleaning lady, the various possibilities she thought of were converging into one situation she hoped would not happen. If what she saw yesterday was not wrong, then. No, he can't. He had finally regained himself, yet this. If her suspicions were proven to be correct, then she swore to herself that she'd save him no matter the cost. With this in mind, she arrived at the door to room 405. Jihu! Thud, thud, Sial Jihu! She pounded on the door for a while, but there was no response. Yu Xian bit her lower lip and fished out a key from her handbag. He gave her this key a while back, saying that she should use it in an emergency. She knew that she shouldn't do this, but now wasn't the time to argue about the finer points. She inserted the key in the lock and heard it unlatch. Yu Xian pushed the door wide open but didn't enter, because, as soon as she saw the interior, she displayed the expression of stupefaction. She heard just now from the cleaning lady that he was in his room yet. Jai Jihu? There was no one in the room. Not even a trace of human presence remained. The room was empty. Yu Xian dazedly looked around the room before she suddenly spotted items that didn't belong here. They were items for women. She could tell that those obviously didn't belong to Sial Jihu. Yu Xian squeezed her eyes shut before quietly closing the door. She locked the door again and stood in the same spot for a long time. You idiot! A short while later, Yu Xian breathed in deeply as if she had made her mind up over something. And with a grim expression on her face, she switched her phone on. Only a handful of rings went by before the call was picked up, and a voice that sounded artificial came out from the speaker. Miss S. Xianhua? Yes, it's me. Oh my goodness, is it really you, Miss Xianhua? Yes, it's me. There's something I'd like to talk to you about. Yu Xian spoke with a heavy voice before taking a look around her. She then brought the phone very close to her mouth and began whispering for a while. Pardon, W, what did you say? That's what I'll be doing. Wait a minute, Miss Xianhua. I can't speak at length at the moment. As for the details, Yu Xian blurred the ends of her words and bit her lip again. A short moment of silence later. The things you said, are they coming from your heart? Chapter 46. First experience 1. Experiencing something for the first time would always be a special moment. The sensation of going to paradise was somewhat like sinking into the depths of the ocean. Sial felt his entire body becoming heavy and sluggish. After quietly closing his eyes, Sial Jihu felt his body emerging out into the open air. When he opened his eyes, the transfer gate from the temple was behind him, still emitting that mysterious light. You're finally here. He also saw Kim Hannah waiting for him. He had finally returned to paradise. This would be his second time entering this world. Sial Jihu presented his slip to the counter and received a key in return. He quickly made his way to the storage to retrieve his gear. He confirmed that the gold 8 changed to silver, returned the key, and exited from the temple. Kim Hannah was waiting for him by the entrance, and when she saw him, she opened her mouth to speak. Did you check everything? Yeah. Well, in that case. She suddenly let out a long sigh and formed a deeply wistful expression. It's not too late, you know. He was about to ask her what she was talking about, but then she silently signaled him with her eyes. It was only for a brief moment, but he didn't miss her eyes drifting to her right. Well, honestly, I just want to enjoy myself and relax for a little while longer. In that case, I guess there isn't much I can do then. But please do give me a call when you change your mind, okay? Sinyoung's doors will always remain open for you. Kim Hannah presented him with an ivory-colored bag. It contained supplies that she had prepared for him under her own name. It was far inferior compared to what Sinyoung was offering, but then again, it was still better than nothing. Also, it was a bit much for a level 1 like himself to receive them too. So Seol Jihu gratefully accepted the supplies. Will it be fine if I don't accompany you? No, it'll be fine. I know you're really busy anyways. Then how about only until the south gate? I said I'm fine. A woman persistently sticking to the clearly irritated man, of course. They were putting on an act for others to see. When she was in paradise, Kim Hannah had to be seen as loyal to Sinyoung. Seriously, I have to do some weird things, don't I? They shared short farewells and went their separate ways. They had already discussed about everything he needed to know back on Earth, and also he was aware of how busy Kim Hannah was, too. He wasn't a little kid anymore, so he didn't want to waste her valuable time with unimportant stuff. So, this is Scheherazade. The uniform rows of earth-colored stone buildings, clean and well-maintained avenues, and finally, throngs of people going about their daily lives wherever he looked. As befitting the capital of a kingdom, this place was overflowing with vitality. He found it hard to believe that there was a war going on somewhere just from the mood of this place. Also, many fantastical structures such as castles, towers, and military barracks that couldn't be seen on modern Earth caught his curious gaze. What would the shops sell here? What about the blacksmiths? There were other temples around here too. He was so curious about many things. If it were up to him, then he'd spend at least a day or so to sightsee what this city had to offer. But Seol Jihu first had to resolve this urgent problem called leave this place as soon as possible. Scheherazade was the most prosperous city within the territory controlled by humans, and indeed, Sinyoung's headquarters was also located here. In other words, this city was their backyard. Seol Jihu couldn't help but feel a bit aggrieved by the fact that he had to leave this perfectly fine city behind and go somewhere else, as if he was being chased away. But what could he do? Sinyoung was obsessively observing every move he made. If he didn't want to become their puppet, then he had to go to a place where their influence didn't reach. He walked while looking around and eventually arrived at the south gate. There was a huge open stone gate, and next to it, stables and horse-pulled carriages. Can you even call those carriages? Seol Jihu blinked his eyes in dumbfoundedness. Unless one had no money, it was this world's common knowledge to utilize the services of carriages when moving from one city to another. But well, he couldn't help but panic a bit after spotting rows upon rows of worn-out, rickety wooden carts parked there. Instead of the covered coach, he rode in when he left the neutral zone. Out of all these, carriages with flaps on either sides to block out some of the elements looked a bit better than the most. Seol Jihu stood there, wondering what he should do next, before cautiously walking over to a man lying on a stack of hay while chewing on a grass stalk near one such carriage. "Hello there?" "Mm." The man was staring at the heavens with a bored expression, but as soon as a shadow loomed over him, raised his upper body right away. He was a local, with bronze-colored skin, a mustache, and somewhat disheveled hair. The number of the Paradise's original residents had decreased considerably ever since the war broke out, but still, there were quite a few that had survived. With the exception of those who directly participated in the military affairs, most of the residents who had lost their homes carried on living while getting involved in the Earthlings' activities, such as farming or operating various shops, etc., etc. For instance, this man here, after evacuating to Scheherazade, he switched his job to a wagoneer to make his ends meet. "You an Earthling? Pardon? Ah, yes, I am. Where do you want to go? To the city of Haramark, if possible." Haramark. The previously disinterested expression of the man crumpled in an instant. "No good, then. I only go as far as to Zara." Why? "Because it's uncertain, that's why. You don't often hear the news of an attack taking place on Zara Road, but the Haramark Road on the other hand." The man slowly shook his head and his large hair and then, "Anyways, you say you want to go to Haramark, huh? That's correct. In that case, wait for a bit. Oi tilde Roman 2, Macton." As soon as this guy raised his hand and shouted out, a bald man sitting a bit of distance away from them turned his head around. And Sial Jihu began despairing in his heart right away. Because the bald guy was the driver of a wooden wagon that looked like it was designed to ferry goods. "Why are you calling me? I'm about to set off." "You have a spot left. There will always be a spot left." "Very good. This fella here, he wants to go to Haramark." The man named Macton showed some irritation as he walked closer before he started studying Sial Jihu. "You must be an earthling." "Of course he is. Can't you see that? You really need to ask." "Shut up. I heard you ask the same question earlier on, okay?" Macton's tone was curt, causing the man with the unkempt hair to chuckle out in embarrassment. "I'll calculate your fee separately, okay? 30 copper coins to Zara, but if it's to Haramark, then 300 copper coins up front." The price jumped by 10 times in a single breath. Of course, Sial Jihu immediately realized that price included the compensation for the danger to Macton's life as well. Macton continued to study the earthling youth in front of him before adding a few more words. But if you're willing to work as a mercenary, then I'll have your fee to Haramark." "A mercenary, is it? To guard the wagon as a guard." "I know many safe paths to that city, but I get attacked too, 3 times out of 10. Sial Jihu understood then. He nodded his head and loosened the mouth of his bag. If there was an attack, he'd not be able to stand still and watch anyways. In that case, might as well make it cheaper for himself. Currency of this world was also included among the list of things Kim Hannah was supporting him with. When he opened the money purse, a handful of coins emitting silver luster revealed themselves. She said there are 100 silver coins, didn't she? The basic currency in circulation of paradise were the copper coins and the nickel coins. 100 copper coins were worth a single nickel coin. Above that, there were the silver coins. A single silver coin was worth 1,000 copper coins or 10 nickel coins. Above that were the white silver coins, gold coins, and even platinum coins. But those things were matters still very far away for him right now. When Sial Jihu handed over a silver coin, Macton's eyes became super large in an instant. While giving Sial the change of 8 nickel coins and 20 copper coins, he raised his head up and looked at the sky. The sun was about to touch the middle of the heavens. "If I push hard, we might reach Zara before the end of the day." "What about from Zara to Haramark?" "If everything's smooth and trouble-free during the trip, 2 days. If we're unlucky, be prepared to spend 4 nights outside." 4 days? Let's get going. I was going to set off right away. Macton lightly pushed the back of Sial Jihu. "By the way, it hasn't been that long since you got here, right? What gave you that idea? There ain't a lot of earthlings who reply to us politely like you see." Macton sheepishly scratched his philtrum for a bit, before lightly slapping Sial on the shoulder. "Who'd have thought it would be this bad?" Sial Jihu carefully climbed up to the back of the carriage, no, the wooden wagon. There were wooden benches on either side of the wagon, but they were only barely enough to lean his back against. However, his heart was still pounding really fast. "I'm really nervous, aren't I? The story might have been different if he was doing this right after he left the neutral zone. But now that he went to Earth and came back, he found it harder to come to grips with the reality of the situation where he was using a horse-drawn wagon to travel to another city. Should he say he was getting rather nervous? It's like some kind of a lie, isn't it? However, it also didn't feel so bad either. Well, at the least, he was feeling more comfortable being here compared to when he was on Earth, shortly afterwards. "Giddy up!" Along with Macton's loud shout, Sial Jihu's body tilted to the side as the wagon pulled away. Sial slowly grasped the railing and quietly stared at the city of Scheherazade as it grew smaller in his view. Haramark was a city located towards the south of the humans' territory. There were 2 reasons why Sial Jihu chose this city as his destination. Firstly, it was the only city where Sinyoung's reach didn't extend to. And secondly, Earthlings were allowed free reign in this place, which was quite unlike any other regions. Of course, if there were good points, then there were bound to be bad ones too. One of them was the security of this place, which was so bad that Haramark had earned the nickname of the City of Crime. A royal family also existed in this city, and they at least tried to enforce some sort of rules. But the truth was, they had pretty much stopped interfering with the Earthlings' affairs a long time ago. It couldn't be helped, since all those organizations who participated in the rebellion had been forced to reallocate their headquarters to this city. The other bad point was that this city was very close to the front lines. Sure, warfare and the Earthlings went hand in hand, but Sial Jihu was only a level 1. The reason why he was still going there, though, well, technically speaking, the Haramark Castle was not located near the border regions. As far as security was concerned, everywhere was pretty much the same, with the exception of Scheherazade. And because of the warfare raging on between the humans and the alliance of the extraterrestrial beings and other species, he figured that the most powerful humans wouldn't have the time to pay attention to this place and its ongoings. Kim Hannah thought for a while regarding this matter, before agreeing to let Sial go to Haramark on the condition that he'd not travel further south. And so, he entrusted his well-being to the rickety wooden cart with a heart full of expectations and hope. But around the 2-hour mark, his butt started to ache. He had grown sick and tired of watching the scenery pass by. Well, there was nothing to see anyway, since it was just the same desolate wasteland everywhere he looked. I'm bored. If he knew someone on this trip, then he might have started a conversation at least. He ended up thinking about his friends and the Yi siblings multiple times as the wagon continued on. Sial Jihu watched the brown scenery pass by while resting his chin on his hands, before shifting his gaze to the other passengers. There were 3 other people riding on the wagon, besides himself and the driver, Macton. They were travelers just like him, and judging from their attire, they were Earthlings too. The bald African dude sitting next to Sial Jihu while yawning out constantly boasted a huge physique and was kitted out in sturdy-looking armors. Also, his huge battle axe and its sharp edges caught his interest. For some reason, this guy was eyeing the passenger on the opposite side with narrowed eyes. Sial Jihu followed after that man's eyes and took a look first at a youngish man with a kind face and well-combed blonde hair sitting on the other side. He seemed to be a priest, judging from the white priest get-up and the discolored cape on his back. And next to him was an attractive woman with a set of wild red hair as well as a longbow on her back. She had her arms across her chest and her legs crossed as well, her head rhythmically nodding in slumber. Just as Sial Jihu discovered hints of freckles on her nose, a husky voice of the African man suddenly came from beside him. The axe warrior was studying the woman as his back inclined slightly. Her sleep must not have been that deep, as she slowly raised her head to glare with a crumpled expression. "What me?" Her unhappy tone of voice implied how irritated she was by the man's attempt to wake her up, just as sleep was about to embrace her. "That's right. Your bow is pretty good, isn't it?" The woman maintained her cold expression, but the corners of her eyes arched up slightly. "Well, I was in Scheherazade because of this guy, after all. Because of a bow. There were this and that to take care of, too. I can see that it's a longbow designed for war. By any chance, are you a level 4? The woman shook her head. "Nope, level 3. I'm a tracer." "Oh, a tracker, huh? Different than how you look." She coyly narrowed her eyes at the black man's amazed exclamation. "Did you wake me up because you wanted to ask me that?" "Well, I was curious, that's all. Don't make me laugh. If you're done asking me questions, then I'd like to go back to my beauty sleep." Hearing her thorny reply, the black man grinned slyly. "Why are you reacting like this when you know what's up already? How much? What is he talking about now?" Since he was getting bored anyway, Sial Jihu was focusing on this conversation, only to tilt his head slightly. "Ehu." The woman spat out a lengthy groan as if she saw this coming a mile away. She breathed in heavily for a bit before pointing at her mouth. 5 coins. Nickels. Aren't you a confident one? What about going all the way?" She swept her gaze all over the axe-wielding warrior before snorting out. "It's pretty hard to find a muscle brain with substance to back it up. You will only find out if it's the right length or not after taking a look, right? The axe warrior slapped his sizable thigh a couple of times, but the woman shook her hand around. Don't want to. Don't have a hobby of doing it on a moving wagon. I'll add one more nickel coin. How about it? I still don't want to. If you don't like it, forget about it then. I wouldn't have agreed if it weren't for my tight budget after I bought this bow. The large warrior licked his lips, then quickly pulled out the coins from his inner pocket before tossing them at her. The woman lightly caught them all and yawned out loudly. After getting up from her spot, she scratched the back of her head while signaling to Sial Jihu with her chin. Excuse me, let's switch. Sial Jihu dazedly swapped the seat with her. She then placed her side on the big warrior's thigh. How about touching? You can't go low, and the moment you put your hand on my head, I'm going to kill you. Ha, aren't you a fierce one? The warrior chuckled jovially before inserting his large hand under the woman's top. Fondle, fondle? Sial Jihu dazedly watched on before realizing that the woman had lowered her head on the warrior's crotch. Sial Jihu ended up hiccuping out of sheer shock. He belatedly turned his eyes away. What the hell are they doing now? His heart began pounding hard. Was this the so-called culture shock? The inside of his brain became blank like a sheet of white paper after seeing something he couldn't have imagined in his wildest dreams. The priest was watching all this unfold with a disinterested expression. But when he saw the young man next to him blush heavily while visibly panicking, a soft grin replaced that bored expression. First time seeing something like this? Oh yes, it is. The priest glanced at Sial Jihu's 2 spears and spoke in a surprised tone of voice. But you look like you're at least level 2. Have you been staying in Scheherazade all this time? Sial Jihu managed to recover his wits just enough to nod his head. Huh, so you were a gentleman, eh? So it'll be your first time traveling to Haramark? That's correct. Was Sial making a mistake when he thought that the priest's teasing voice sounded a bit like he was mocking the youth? If it's your first time, let them have some fun. Unlike Scheherazade in Haramark, the idea of romance still burns strong, you see. Sial nearly blurted out romance, my foot, but he somehow held back the urge. You know how it is. There's no television, no computer, whatever. So what is there for us to do here? Sure, you might think we've got all these explorations and expeditions, but it's not like we can go on those all the time. In the end, we eat, drink, and fuck. We end up being more faithful towards our basic instincts. Those are the only things we have as pastime, after all. Sial Jihu couldn't really sympathize with that notion, but he continued to nod his head. Well, he had to do something here, since the sucking noise coming from the other side was really getting on his nerves at the moment. See, the thing was, Sial Jihu thought it was infinitely preferable to focus on chatting to a friendly priest with a happy grin on his face, rather than looking at the pair of crazed and uninhibited man and woman going at it in a public space. The young priest continued to talk excitedly before going, oops, and offered his hand. Name's Alex. I'm a level 3 investigative priest from Area 4. You, Sial Jihu hesitated slightly before shaking the offered hand. I'm Sial. I'm a level 1 warrior from Area 1. Level 1. Alex's jaw dropped to the floor before laughing out loud. He placed his hand on his forehead. Oh, now I get it. You weren't a gentleman, but a newbie. Alex then lightly poked the youth in the ribs with his elbow as a lewd grin formed on his face. Well, when you get to Haramark, you will definitely get a shock of your life. Sial Jihu could only smile awkwardly after seeing Alex's giggling eyes. The trip became a lot less boring once Sial began chatting to Alex. As for the priest, he got way too excited by the fact that the youth continued to listen to his stories, so he began telling Sial all sorts of things. In the meantime, the wagon left the area of desolate wasteland and entered a new region. They arrived at Zara after sunset, just as Macton said they would. After hearing that this was a village, Sial imagined that Zara would be a collection of small rural homesteads with equally small number of residents, but he got quite surprised by the size of the place. Alex explained that there were well over 1,000 residents living here, and that one could even find government offices, inns, and markets in the village. He also said that one could find most of the daily necessities in the markets as well. but he also emphasized that this village had been receiving support from Scheherazade, and other villages were not like this one at all. Feeling fatigued from riding on the wagon for the whole day, Sial Jihu went straight to the rented room in the inn after dinner. As this would be his first proper night spent in paradise, this occasion should have held a lot of sentimental value, but it turned out to be rather disastrous instead. The building itself was rather flimsy, and thanks to that, Sial got to hear the axe warrior and the tracer lady going at it the whole night long. Blocking his ears didn't prevent him from hearing the panting groans of the man nor the moans of the woman. In the end, he couldn't get to rest properly, and while carrying a totally fatigued face, he climbed aboard the wagon as it got ready to depart in the early dawn. Sial Jihu couldn't help but feel a bit angry at the man and woman giggling and talking to each other, but as soon as the trip got underway and the wagon left Zara, such thoughts slowly evaporated from his mind. The further they traveled, the scenery changed more and more. The reddish soil of the wasteland was gradually covered up by grass and plants, and soon, even trees made their appearances. It didn't take long after that for trees tall enough to block out the sky to appear too. The road became rougher as well. But seeing the changing scenery while drinking in the smell of nature had its own appreciable charm. After he breathed in the cool, clean air, the sleep that he didn't get to enjoy earlier on slowly crept up on Sial. If there was another thing that had changed, then that would be the attitudes of the axe warrior and the tracer woman had changed as they got closer to Haramark. The axe warrior didn't try to initiate lewd conversations any longer, while the tracer woman sat quietly as her eyes became sharper and focused. Get some sleep. It'll be fine. We should be okay for the next half a day or so. Sial Jihu's eyes closed softly after getting the permission from Alex. It was only yesterday when he thought the archer lady sleeping on the wagon was something pretty amazing, but now he was confident that he'd fall asleep just like she had done. I wish we could arrive at Haramark as soon as possible. And so, how much time passed by? What happened? Keep your voices down. Wake him up. Wait, that? Sial was still half asleep when he thought he heard voices. Then he felt someone shake him by his shoulder. When he woke up from his nap, the first thing he saw was a dark forest. And, although it was just his intuition, it seemed that the wagon was moving at a far quicker speed for some reason. Wake up, Sial. Alex? You up? Where? Just before Sial could finish his question, Alex placed his finger against his lips and signaled that he should keep his voice down. Sial Jihu closed his mouth shut and surveyed his surroundings. A forest. That wasn't the only alarming thing, though. The large warrior was fidgeting around with his axe as an uneasy expression remained etched on his face. More importantly, the archer lady had her ear pressed tightly to the floor of the wagon at the moment. She was concentrating hard. Anxiety was easy to see in her facial expression. Chapter 47. First experience, too. He wasn't imagining things. Wish. The gust of wind blowing past Sial Jihu's ear stung as if a piece of sandpaper was dragged across his face. Two horse-like creatures were already running at full tilt, yet Macton was still whipping them hard, his urgent voice roaring out. This doesn't feel good, does it? The big man clicked his tongue and put on a battle helm with a flat top that kind of resembled a bucket. He then shouted out, "Did you have to use this road through the forest?" "This road is my lifeline. There was no problem 9 days ago," Macton replied without looking back. "How long have you been using this road, then?" 3 months. "Goddamn, you'd have spread lots of your trace around here in those 3 months," the warrior complained under his breath and lowered his body. "Sial, you should get down too." Alex bent down and pulled Sial down to the floor as well. "Listen to me. From now on, do not leave my side. Understand?" Not a hint of mischievousness could be seen in Alex's expression now as he spoke in a grave voice. His serious, focused eyes only served to further tighten Sial Jihu's chest. Sial Jihu knelt down on the floor and lowered his body, his grip on the 2 spears tightening. At the same time, he activated 9 eyes. Son of a... He somehow held back the cuss from escaping from his mouth. The entire forest was in the shade of orange. Do not approach. However, he was already inside the danger zone. This would be his first time encountering such a situation. He should have prevented the wagon from entering this forest in the first place, but he had fallen asleep and didn't even know that he was being delivered into the open mouth of a tiger. Sial Jihu was about to suggest that they get out of here fast, but shut his mouth after seeing Macton whipping his rides hard while sweat continuously poured down the guy's frowning face. The wagon was already running at full speed way before he even woke up. What should I do now? It should be considered something of a happy occurrence that the forest wasn't in black, escape immediately, or red, immediate retreat recommended. But this orange color presented enough of danger already. After all, he nearly got burned from underestimating the threat posed by the yellow color in the past. As his complexion hardened, Alex to his side was in the middle of taking out a palm-sized crucifix. The surroundings were rather eerily quiet, other than the sounds of hooves pounding on the ground and Alex's quiet murmuring as he chanted his spell. As this unbearable silence continued on, the big man began gritting his teeth. Meanwhile, the archer still had her ear glued to the floor of the wagon, not showing any signs of moving. Say something. Oi, the distance, the direction, the number of them, anything is fine, so say something. I don't know. What? I don't know, I can't tell. She lifted her head back up and formed a confused expression. I can definitely hear a strange noise mixed in among the rest, but it's too faint and I can't grasp it. Ha! Are you sure you're a tracer? The warrior spat out some words of exasperation, causing the archer woman to narrow her eyes in anger. What are you trying to imply? Fuck, man. You say you're a level 3, but how can you not know anything? Shut your mouth. Do I look like a high ranker to you? What do you expect me to do here when I need to be on the actual ground to hear anything? Her pride must have been wounded because she shot right back at him. The warrior looked as if he had nothing else to say and only spat out lengthy groans. Decide fast. Do we keep running or do we stop? Hurry. Macton asked with an anxious voice. DMN it. What choice do we have? Stop the wagon? No, keep running. As soon as the big man voiced his opinion, the woman sharply opposed him. Macton was about to yank on the reins to stop the wagon, so quite understandably, he ended up spitting out a cuss word. The big black man looked at the woman with a dumbfounded expression before growling at her like a wild beast. This crazy bitch. You want to fight me when we're in this situation? It's you who don't know shit. What will you do when we stop and get surrounded? How do you know that there isn't an ambush waiting for us up ahead? So we stop and get down from the wagon. Stop, both of you. Unable to take it anymore, Alex finally intervened. The crucifix in hand was emitting a calm, gentle light now. It doesn't matter whether it's a team or an expedition. Archers always take the lead. Let's just listen to her for the time being, okay? What do you say, Hugo? Seeing that Alex addressed the big man by name, they must have known each other. After pacifying Hugo, Alex turned to study the archer. I should place priority on your opinions as you're an archer, but even I think it'll be better for us to stop at an adequate place and find out what we're dealing with first. We can only come up with a strategy if we know what we're up against. I know that. But look around, there isn't any adequate place to stop. The archer woman replied unhappily before biting her lower lip. It's like we're being led around. I can feel that something isn't right. Alex's brows quivered. Fuck me, did you hear her just now? You're supposed to be an archer, yet you're busy mouthing off about your gut feelings. Hugo cried out in anger. If it weren't for that fact that he was crouched real low to the floor, he might have jumped up and down with that big physique of his. Alex maintained his patience as he opened his mouth. If you're relying on gut instinct, I can't place my trust in you. The odds are half-half. It's better for us to stop the wagon immediately and figure out what's going on right away. The archer snorted and turned around to face the other direction. Fine. However, you need to give me 30, no 15 seconds. I can't be certain, but we might be facing a group of riders. Alex didn't disagree with that. What she said made perfect sense, but also, in case the archer's words were proven to be correct, then stopping the wagon would be tantamount to committing suicide. Macton, don't stop the wagon abruptly, but slow down gradually, so you can set off at a short notice, got it? Got it. All right. But, what? Alex turned around to face the archer once more before falling into a state of daze from what he saw. The eyes of the woman were gleaming in soft light before that light disappeared. She then cautiously raised her torso up and peeked her head past the railings. "Ah, hey. What are you doing? Sit down." Hugo freaked out. She utterly disregarded him while surveying her surroundings. Then she nodded her head. "I think we aren't being herded around. It should be fine to slow down." "Herded or not," I said, "lower your goddamn head. Seriously, stop shouting, will you?" The archer covered her ears and showed how annoyed she was. "Are you an idiot? If I were to get sneak attacked, then that driver would have been hit first." Hugo became even more dumbfounded than before. His mouth opened and closed a couple of times before an expression of suspicion formed on his face. Are you really level 3? Ha. The woman spat out a groan. It was as if she didn't know what to do with him. She then placed a hand on her waist and opened her mouth. It happened then. PSH. PSH? Along with the faint whispers of air being split apart. In any case? Her words came to a sudden stop. Her eyes that had been mocking Hugo suddenly spun around. She then began faltering theatrically. Her head and her shoulders slowly trembled before she fell face first to the floor. Her body trembled only for a second before it went limp. She was dead. Alex's face crumpled unsightly as soon as spotting a lengthy needle sticking out of the back of the woman's head. "You idiot!" Hugo angrily cried out as well. Sial Jihu couldn't wrap his head around on what just happened. The woman who was so full of confidence only until a second ago died in the blink of an eye. It was as if he was having a bad nightmare. Alex extracted the needle out and frowned deeply. Wait a minute. Can it be? Next, they heard the pained cries of animals coming from the front. Just as Sial went, crap, the wagon tilted and then overturned on the side. "You-ah!" Alex was flung away, both of his arms helplessly flailing in the air. Sial Jihu, too, was thrown in the air. Before he knew it, he was sent flying. He was still gripping his spear tightly. As the sensation of his tummy being sucked in hit him, he clearly saw at Macton's neck thrown backwards, and his arms powerlessly dancing in the air, with a needle stuck in his forehead. The wagon overturned, and the surviving trio was thrown out from the back. Sial Jihu managed to land safely in the bushes and rolled on the ground to dissipate the momentum. "Fuck, riders, my ass. It's the goddamn moles." Sial heard Hugo roar out at the top of his lungs, but the youth had no time to mind that. Before he had the chance to take a breather, 4 pale white hands shot out from the earth below, each of them carrying sharp daggers. He didn't even have the time to see them take a swing at him. He let go of the spear and rolled further away. He bounced right back up at the end of the tumbling action and took a look at the spot he was in and saw the 4 daggers stabbing there. He felt a chill run down his back. However, picking up his spear took priority over him freaking out and asking what the hell those were. He snatched up his spear and rapidly stabbed the ground where those 4 hands jutted out from. Stab. He felt the spear pierce past the soft earth and then dig into something more substantial. It was almost as if he had stabbed into a large radish. He then stabbed forward even harder and rotated the spear shaft. Right away, 2 of the 4 hands coming out from the ground went crazy as if they were having a seizure. When that happened, the other 2 hands began pushing up on the ground as if they wanted to come out from there. Not so fast. Sial pulled the spear out and rapidly stabbed the ground again, causing the other hands to do that dying dance as well. "See you all? Who you go?" Sial quickly turned around as soon as he heard the urgent cry. Alex hadn't been able to get up yet. He was bitterly resisting 2 hands sprouting from the ground as they restrained him. His arms and shoulders were quaking hard from the struggle, but the daggers were closing in gradually. Due to the overturning of the wagon, their distance was greater than Sial expected it to be. He pulled the spear out, and thick coating of blood at the tip of his weapon drew an arc in the air. He quickly circulated his mana through his reinforced circuit. He focused his power in his right arm and threw the spear as hard as he could. Swish! The spear carrying his overwhelming mana flew past Alex and dug deep into the ground. "You walk?" Alex reflexively turned his head away, only to blink his eyes in shock. He then realized that his hands no longer felt the pulling from under the ground. He hurriedly yanked his arms loose and got up from the spot. Huh! Hugo belatedly arrived there before staring at Cial with an equally surprised face. Then he shouted out, "Over there, your left leg." Cial was bending down to pick up the other spear, but as soon as he heard the warning, he jumped right up. Another dagger swept past where his foot was. He landed back on his feet and stabbed the ground, but when he felt movement below again, he lifted his left leg up. He dodged the hand with the dagger with his swift footwork and stabbed the ground with his spear. Soon, the soil was dyed in the color of blood. Oh, when Cial took care of 4, maybe 5 unknown assailants in one go, Hugo began grinning with an expression that said, "Would you look at this kid go?" He then burst out in a raucous laughter, raised his giant axe up high, before slamming that heavy weapon down to the ground. Quang! What came out next was the impact noise that couldn't possibly have been made by an axe. Cial's eardrums shook hard. The earth exploded up and blasted away, leaving behind the air rippling clearly visible to the naked eye. He couldn't tell whether that was Hugo's mana or one of his abilities, but if that was from purely his physical strength, then that was one of the most electrifying displays of power he had ever seen. This is the best method in dealing with the goddamn moles. Hugo beamed brightly while resting the axe against his shoulder. Cial couldn't understand that guy's relaxed behavior since they were still in the middle of a battle, but it seemed Alex did understand. Nice. Well done, Hugo. Now it's our turn. Alex quickly picked up the crucifix off the ground as his eyes burned in anger. You sons of bitches. The moment you all show your faces above ground, it'll be your funeral. The meaning behind those words revealed itself soon afterwards. With the spot where Hugo slammed his axe down as the central point, over 10 pairs of arms broke out from the ground in a disorderly fashion. Alex, Hugo gripped his axe tightly and shouted out, "I know." Alex spat out a short, breathless gasp, placed a hand on his side to press down a wound there as he pushed forward his crucifix. Luxu lu luxuria? Suddenly, a blinding light exploded forth from the crucifix, and at the same time the creatures emerging out from the ground all froze up mid-action. Oh yeah, time to pull out some vegetables then. Hugo ran forward as if he had gained wings and yanked at one of the arms from the ground. Then, a strange monster with 2 arms and 2 legs that resembled a trunk of a tree but with animal hide covering its body was pulled out from its hiding spot. Hugo easily bisected the stiffly frozen monster, then without taking a break, went around repeating the action of pulling and killing the monsters. Soon, the duration of the spell came to an end, allowing these strange monsters to fully emerge above ground. By this time, though, their numbers had been whittled down to only 7. Also, they were all staggering around as if they were suffering from concussion. Cial continued to be vigilant against the ground near his feet, but Alex spoke to him in a relaxed tone. "It's fine. It's already over." Over. What do you mean? Right. See, these moles instinctively hate mana. These bastards will emerge above ground as soon as you pour in enough mana where they are hiding. Moles? Alex formed a wry smile at Cial's follow-up question. However, the youth saved his life just now, so answering this much was nothing. Think of them as land-bound fish. They move around by swimming underground. Cial Jihu tilted his head to the side. He couldn't even imagine how anything could swim underground. In any case, they failed to kill us through their sneak attack, so it's the end for them. Hugo is a level 4 barbarian warrior. Moles attacking from below the ground might have proven to be an irritating nuisance, but fighting them above ground is as easy as taking candies from a baby. Alex pointed to his front. Hugo was treating these crazed monsters called moles like a bunch of unruly children. Seeing the big man swing around his axe and cut them down one by one, even Cial felt his mind getting freed from anxiety. Alex continued on. Actually, moles are really crafty and sneaky bastards. And these particular things must have fought against the Earthlings a couple of times already. How can you tell? Simple. Where do you think these monsters got their hands on the daggers? Bah. They must have also figured out that we had an archer among us because they hid deep underground and tried to confuse us. Otherwise, We would have discovered them the moment they got near the surface. They spread around and waited for an opening before firing those needles. As soon as they killed one of us, they attacked us properly. How scary. I know, right? But that stupid archer woman. Alex spat out angrily before coughing out to clear his throat. It was a waste of time to badmouth a dead person, after all. In any case, that's not all. Since they usually form a herd, they move around in large packs, and then... Alex began laughing strangely and moved his pointing finger away from Hugo towards Cial. The youth glanced down at himself, and his jaw dropped from the surprise. He spotted 4 needles stuck in the middle of his chest armor. It seemed he had been sniped during the battle. And then, they possess enough intelligence to assign different roles, too. Ah, don't worry about it. Those who'd been sniping us should have ran away by now. Alex saw Cial scanning the area and stopped the youth from making a move before tilting his head in puzzlement. But this is really strange. I haven't heard of news that moles have popped up near Haramark until now. I'm finished. Hugo squeezed and popped the head of the last mole with his bare hands before shouting out with his arms raised up high. Nicely done, Hugo. That was way too easy. Rather than that, you okay? Hugo took large strides and came in closer before asking Alex. The young priest smiled weakly. Actually, I got hit once. In that case, hurry up and heal yourself first. I won't be able to thank you if you're dead. Pewhat? Yeah, you're right. Alex plopped down on the ground before producing a small vial. While the priest was grunting on the ground, Hugo strutted a little while studying Cial Jihu. Hey, man, I saw your fancy footwork just now. You sure you're only level 1? Yeah, I was wondering about that myself. It would be easier to believe that Cial is level 3 with that archer being level 1. Alex spoke with an anguished face as he tipped the healing liquid from the vial on his wounds. Hugo nodded his head as if he agreed with that assessment. That damned bitch. I've never seen a tracer like her before. I thought I might die from frustration, you know? That woman, she wasn't a tracer. Alex chuckled softly. And she obviously wasn't a level 3 either. She was level 2 at best, and she probably leveled up recently too. What? Hugo asked back with a disbelieving face. Alex breathed out softly as if the pain had lessened a great deal and answered the big man. I definitely saw it. It was only for a moment, but her eyes were shining. If I'm correct, then that's not the ability 1,000-mile eyes but the eagle eye. You know that 1,000-mile eyes is a must-learn ability for archers when they reach level 3, right? Wait a damn minute here. Now that I think about it, eagle eye is something you learn when you hit level 2. Hugo dazedly muttered to himself before his expression crumpled. Goddamn it, she's been lying to us since the beginning. Well, come on now. You know that there are plenty of people lying about their levels in Haramark. I mean, you see a ton of idiots coming up with all sorts of excuses when you ask them to show you their status windows. Damn it. How did she even get that longbow then? Her equipment also looked pretty good too. She probably got a good sponsor or something. Alex sounded confident of his findings as he stood back up, and then he turned toward Cial. Cial, an advice, if you will. We might have won today, but this wasn't what you'd call a good victory. Of course, you fought well above anyone's expectations, but for me and Hugo, this was a bad fight. Cial Jihu nodded his head. He roughly understood what Alex was trying to say here. If everyone acted according to both Hugo's and Alex's opinions, then these enemies would have been dealt with quite painlessly. Even if an archer was tasked to head up a team, this would be the result when the right to make the final decision was given to someone not qualified for such a task. Through this experience, Cial got to engrave this lesson right down to his bones. Gee, if I knew we were facing moles, I wouldn't even have broken out in sweat. Hugo continued to complain bitterly. Who knew we'd be up against moles, but, in any case. Alex looked around his vicinity and his shoulders drooped helplessly. Macton and the archer woman was dead, and the wagon was smashed to bits, and we're right in the middle too, Ehu. However, Alex didn't lose hope and asked the question anyway. Anyone with a bright idea? Of course, no one raised their hands. The big guy, the youth, and the priest spat out a long groan almost at the same time. Chapter 48. Haramark. Should they continue on or go back to Zara? Alex and Hugo debated for a long time regarding this crucial matter. Because the incident had taken place smack bang in the middle of the way, it was hard for them to come to a quick decision. Sial Jihu didn't say anything. He knew he had little experience when it came to things like this, and left the decision to the two veterans. The duo talked for a while, and in the end, the decision was made to go forward. They agreed that rather than going back and waiting for another archer and wagon, and therefore waste even more time and money, it'd be simpler to just walk the rest of the way to their destination. Sial Jihu also agreed. He was slightly worried about walking that much distance, but he decided to trust his overall endurance, something he took great pains to train back in the neutral zone. All right. We leave, but before that, let's take what we can. After the agreement was reached, Hugo suddenly spoke up about a different matter. I'm going to look at the archer woman, so you two go rummage what you can. Hugo whistled to himself as he turned around to walk away. I'm going to pick up the daggers the moles dropped, so Sial, please take care of Macton's end. Alex, too, quickly made his move. Sial Jihu wondered what that guy was doing, only to see him bend down to pick up the daggers the dead moles had dropped. Meanwhile, Hugo was dragging the corpse of the archer woman out of the wreckage of the wagon. Only then did the youth understand what was going on here. They were looting the dead. Indeed, they were stealing the personal artifacts from the dead. Macton's body was lying in front of the broken wagon, with a needle stuck in his forehead and his eyes still wide open. Sial Jihu found it hard to reach out with his hands. Rather than him feeling disgusted or scared by the human corpse, he was simply feeling apologetic. But he was someone Sial met only yesterday. The youth didn't really harbor any particular feelings toward the dead man, neither bad nor good. However, this man carried out his given role right until the end. He trusted the earthlings riding on his wagon to do theirs, too. Sial was supposed to guard him, but in the end he couldn't protect the man. What's the matter? Why are you hesitating? Hugo walked up to Sial with a beaming face. Damn, that girl was loaded, man. She had so much stuff on her beside that longbow. Come take a look. The big warrior pushed forward a handful of mixed items. Sial Jihu received them almost out of reflex and then ended up frowning a little. The bow and arrows were a given, but then he saw not only the defensive equipment, but even a lady's underwear among the loot. Thinking there's no way, he turned his head to look, and sure enough, he saw the completely naked back of the archer lying face down in the dirt. It was the same story for Macton. Rigor mortis must have made moving the body difficult, yet Hugo was expertly stripping the dead driver's unmoving body. Hugo. Oh, it's you, Sial. What's up? Is there a need to strip him off his clothes, and for that matter, his underwear too? Of course. Sure, they won't sell that high, but every cent counts. Hugo replied straightforwardly, as if he didn't understand why anyone would ask this question. Still this and still that. You worried that a dead body might catch a cold or something. Hugo laughed out at his own joke before his expression calmed down. He spoke to Sial in a serious voice. Look, man, you gotta be decked out in proper armor if you want to be acknowledged as a warrior. And when you level up, you need to buy new equipment, but the price increases exponentially that they actually physically hurt you. Money don't fall from trees, my man. We save up every cent like this until we can afford the stuff we need. Now that Sial heard this notion also made some sense. Still, some hesitation remained in his heart. Hugo cackled after sensing the youth's moods. There ain't nobody here to praise you for being a noble person, Sial. What do you think will happen if you leave the corpses untouched here? The stuff will either get damaged as the wild beasts snack on the bodies, or some other lucky sobs would stumble by and loot them anyways. If you still feel guilty, then think this way. You sell these and get yourself a better weapon. And then, when you encounter moles next time, kill every single motherfucker you see. That is the best way to appease the souls of the departed. Okay? Hugo eventually located the money purse and grinned brightly. Among the mixture of copper and nickel coins, there was a single silver coin. Here, take it. Hugo extracted the silver coin and after taking a look at his side, gave the coin to Sial. It was Sial's coin given to Macton as the fee for his ride. Hey, hurry up. His back is turned around right now. But, it's fine, it's fine. Hugo pushed the silver coin down the youth's pocket. He then placed his index finger across his lips and went sh with a smile on his face. The thing is, I also got back the payment I gave that girl when we were fooling around, you see? Hugo giggled and also added that Sial was now an accomplice and that he should keep it a secret from Alex. Hugo then turned around to leave. Sial Jihu was about to follow after the big man, but he stopped. His expression became complicated after looking at the naked body of Macton. This kind of world? The youth slowly reached down and pulled the needle out. Then he closed the dead man's eyes. He heard others calling out to him to hurry up. He increased his pace and caught up with them. Today, he almost figured out a little bit of what this world, paradise, was all about. They eventually escaped from the forest and continued to march onwards. Walking for the whole day was never going to be an enjoyable or fulfilling experience, though. When the night descended, Sial Jihu got to experience camping outside in paradise for the first time. Staying up as a guard during the night was also a first since he left the military, too. Those were probably the reason why his entire body ached and his head felt like it weighed a ton when he woke up in the morning. He hadn't experienced such stiffness and pain ever since he left the first ranker's quarters in the neutral zone. He told himself that this was something he had to get used to anyways, and continued on with the march without complaining once. Becoming friendly with Hugo along the way was an unexpected bonus. He could be a bit of hot-blooded guy, but when the youth got to know him better, he proved to be as outgoing and friendly as Alex was. Hugo, too, looked favorably at the youth. He believed in the notion that warriors had to be tough bastards, and so he found Sial to his liking as the youth never once complained, even when the marching speed periodically picked up without a single explanation. Also, when the big guy got bored and began talking about some random crap, the youth listened with great interest, which meant Hugo could only grow even more friendly towards Sial. In this fashion, days went by, and as the fourth day on the road was coming to a close, the trio left the rolling hills and came to face a plain that seemed to stretch forever. And at the distant end of the road leading to the city of Haramark, the dying glow of the sunset cast its amber hue on the stone walls, so small and far away in their view. It was Haramark. Just as Macton said, the unlucky trio took 4 days to get to their destination. Hugo raised both of his arms up high and shouted out in happiness. As soon as I arrive, I'm going to go straight to eat, drink, and enjoy. Oh, right. What about you two? Hugo tipped an imaginary cup down his lips and asked his companions. Alex said that he'd like to take a break and refused right away. But why? Parting ways after sharing a glass or two is manly, don't you think? You might have energy left over since you're a warrior, but I'm a priest. Besides, I have to stop by the temple and make a report. It's not like we were on an expedition, so why a report? Come on now. Moles appeared in the vicinity of Haramark. This is something I need to alert the others about as soon as possible. Ah, I forgot. You're right. Hugo massaged his forehead and shifted his glance over to Sial. Sial, what about? Hey, you said that this is your first time in Haramark, right? Even before Hugo could finish his words, Alex butted in first. Yes, it is. Of course, having a cold one isn't such a bad idea, but the eat, drink, and enjoy is, yeah, it may not suit you after all. What are you talking about? Oh, it's just a pub. A multi-purpose pub, if you will. Alex added that he'd find out if he went there personally, before smiling awkwardly. In any case, if you wish to rest up well, then allow me to recommend you to an inn that I know. People go there to sleep for the night, so it'll be sufficiently quiet for you. It's a bit rundown, but it should be fine for your needs. Ah, thank you. No need to thank me. Well, let's get going. Chi, Hugo pouted unhappily. Sial couldn't help but chuckle at the antics of the big man who acted like a spoiled little kid inwardly. Of course. If there was a meeting, then there would also be a parting, too. When the trio arrived at Haramark, they shared brief farewells and went their separate ways. Hugo's feelings must have been hurt by this, or maybe he was simply sulking. Whatever, he just threw out a cold goodbye and turned around to leave. Alex spat out a lengthy groan and led Sial to the inn he was talking about. I'm worried about Hugo. Don't mind him. He's narrow-minded and might do whatever he wants, but he isn't the type to harbor grudges or ill feelings. You buy him a drink later on, and I promise you, he's going to smile like a dog munching on a bone. After hearing Alex's words, Sial formed a gentle smile. Now that he had finally arrived in the city, he wanted to take a look around, but well, he was far too exhausted right now. Rather than sightseeing, he dearly wished to hit the bed with a warm blanket wrapped around him. Welcome to Haramark, my friend. Alex and Sial shared a long, friendly handshake, and the priest left with the parting words of let's meet again in the future. Now left alone, Sial cautiously pushed open the inn's door and entered. An elderly woman taking a nap behind the ground floor counter slowly cracked open an eyelid. What brings you here? Oh, someone I know recommended this place, so? Alone? Yes. A single bedroom will cost you 10 bronze coins for the night. If you want a better accommodation, we have special rooms. They'll cost you 20 bronze coins, however. Give me that special room. After paying up 20 coins, Sial received a key, and by following the old woman's directions, he went up the stairs to the upper floor. The so-called special room was narrow, but quite unexpectedly, clean and tidy. He even spotted a small potted plant that aided in one's natural recovery placed on top of a closet next to the bed. He also liked that there was an old wooden desk just below the window and 2 chairs next to it. Although it was nowhere near as sophisticated as the accommodations found in the neutral zone, he still thought that such an analog-like rustic sensibility wasn't too bad, either. Sial put his bag down and laid down on the bed. For a while, he stared at the aged ceiling without making a noise. He had encountered an incident midway, but besides that, he was able to conclude the rest of the trip without running into other distractions. He fought alongside strangers, befriended them, and went their separate ways. However, I'm sure we will meet each other someday. He did feel a bit empty, but at the same time he saw it as yet another part of the adventure that he should enjoy and get used to. As the bed creaked a little under his weight, his eyes slowly closed. Remembering the cold grass beneath his body when he was camping outside, this bed felt incomparably soft and comfortable. Soon enough, the youth's entire body slackened like wet cotton, and he drifted into a deep slumber, round the time the sun had risen to the middle of the sky. Sial also woke up. He thought he'd wake up in the morning, but perhaps due to the fatigue of the forced march, he ended up sleeping for a long time. However, thanks to that, he felt light and ready to go. Beside his empty stomach, that was, even his heavy head had returned to how it was before. When he cracked open the window, a gentle breeze blew in. He settled down on the windowsill, and while drinking in the fresh air, he looked at the city of Haramark with great interest. Scheherazade had been filled with countless earth-colored buildings, but here in Haramark, the architecture was varied and colorful, to say the least. White, gray, reddish, brown. What should I do now? Now that he was here, he needed to do something. Sial deliberated for a little while before closing the window shut. He put the bag down on the desk and sat on the chair. He opened the mouth of the bag and saw a few different things inside. This thing. He said that I'd get quite a lot of money if I sell this, right? The longbow designed to be used in warfare, it was the most valuable item out of the stuff looted from the dead bodies. Hugo wanted it, but Alex offered it to Sial as a way to console the youth, as his first-ever trip to Haramark turned into an unbridled disaster. Besides that, there were 5 daggers, a leather jacket the archer wore, as well as a silver coin. Sial suddenly recalled the bright face of Hugo as he said the seemingly useless archer woman had 3 silver coins on her. The youth placed that silver coin he secretly got from the big man along with the rest of his money, the elixirs and the divine stigmata. Now that I think about it, do I need to stop by the temple as well? He didn't have a need to go to a temple now if it was just for the divine stigmata. It was something he could use only when he was at a higher level. The divine stigmata branded a person with a trace of divinity, allowing one to receive a god's blessing, which would lead to one unlocking special classes and skill sets. However, one would have to go through the trials and tribulations the gods sent down as well. Whatever the case may be, he couldn't stay idle for long. Kim Hannah told him to take this whole thing as a game. If paradise was indeed a game, then what would he have done? Gather information. Picking up his bag, Sealjihu went downstairs to the ground floor. Before leaving, he returned the key and asked the old woman the direction to the plaza. She simply pointed to her left. When you exit the inn, go left. Soon you will find a big road. Follow that and you'll arrive at the main plaza. He followed her directions. As soon as exiting the inn, he went left and found that big road. If his first step was taken in Scheherazade, then it was time to take yet another one here. The youth felt his heart palpitate faster as he thought about what kind of adventure he'd find in Haramark, and who he'd end up meeting. On the other hand, he was fully aware of the fact that the world operated in a certain way, and things wouldn't work out in the fashion he expected them to. The appearance of Haramark was the exact opposite of Scheherazade in certain areas. If the capital seemed lively and energetic, then Haramark felt chaotic and on edge at the same time. If he were to explain the reason for this mood, then it might have something to do with the unrestricted freedom afforded to the residents here. There were plenty of structures found in the city, but they were arranged in such a chaotic and disorderly fashion, they almost managed to make him feel dizzy. It was to the point where Sealjihu found it hard to tell where he was. The roads were uneven and pockmarked. They were dirty too, with wet straws liberally strewn about and muddy puddles found everywhere. I will probably have a hard time trying to remember the directions in this place. Most importantly, the atmosphere in the city was different. Perhaps because he heard that it was called the City of Crime, every passerby seemed to possess a shady countenance. A short while later, he went past a cracked and damaged wall adorned with graffiti that he couldn't decipher and arrived at an open space. The wide, circular area was teeming with people, and their noisy calls to others only seemed to further add to the chaos and confusion. Sial's eyes sparkled when he discovered the notice board in the middle of the plaza. There's one here, too. He couldn't understand why there was a notice board with missions attached to it back in the neutral zone, but maybe it was to prepare the survivors for this arrangement. He walked closer to the notice board while feeling happy for no reason and almost out of reflex, took a look at the mission parchment located right at the top. Appearances of moles near Haramark confirmed. Below that single line of text, there was an identifying branding and a name. It said, "The Temple of Luxuria," from investigative priest Alex, and when he saw the parchment below that one, Sial hurriedly took a second look at it with disbelieving eyes. Reconnaissance of the Forest of Denial, a mission issued by the royal family reward. Details of negotiation by mutual agreement Cecilia, Cinzia so. Miss Cinzia is also in Haramark. He lowered his gaze further down. From here onwards, no matter what he chose to do, he had to do it in a team. Trying to act alone like back in the neutral zone would be tantamount to committing suicide. It wasn't hard to locate the advertisements for hiring helpers, but Sealjihu's eyes narrowed to a slit. There were so many parchments here that they were basically overlapping one another, and some were even completely covered up by other parchments, requesting for a priest level 2 or higher, recruiting warriors level 3 or higher. So, it's requesting for priests, but recruiting for warriors, huh? Hiring porters. There was a job for porters too? There were so many here that trying to read them only gave him a case of migraine. Finding a mission that suited his condition was also going to be a challenge. In the end, he had to activate 9 eyes. It was okay to manually rate each one, but there was no reason for him to not to use an ability he already possessed. The notice board changed into various colors. One thing that caught his attention was the fact that most of the board were in the shades related to alerting him to the potential dangers. The color yellow was the most dominant one, and orange could be seen here and there as well. Hell, there was even a single red parchment, too. This one's even telling me to run away, too. Sealjihu licked his lips and continued to rummage through the parchments before his hands came to an abrupt halt. His hands stopped by at one of the slips that was hidden underneath the others. He nearly went past it while thinking it was yellow color, but the blinding light coming from it attracted his gaze. Indeed, the paper was gleaming attractively. It's gold. The Golden Commandment. He didn't expect to see a gold color here. Sial Jihu's eyes grew wider as he took a closer look at the parchment. Chapter 49. Carp Diem 1. Carp Diem is searching for a new member. There was a single line of text on the parchment and nothing else, not even an address. However, Sial still liked the fact that it seemingly didn't speak of any restrictions whatsoever. Going there straight away is foolish. It was always better to have plenty of information at hand. Sial Jihu left the plaza and began walking around without a destination in mind. He was thinking of walking into the first restaurant he spotted to take care of his brunch. As he looked around his surroundings, he eventually spotted a worn, shabby wooden signboard in the distance. Eat, drink, and enjoy. Eat, drink, and enjoy. Alex said that this place was a multi-purpose pub yesterday. Hugo wanted to come here along with everyone, but Alex said no right away to the idea. I guess the synchronization doesn't translate signboards. Huh. Sial Jihu tilted his head slightly before heading straight to the pub. He pushed open the door with anticipation bubbling in his heart and was immediately greeted by the noises of people loudly talking to each other. At the same time, his nose was assaulted by the combined odor of cigarettes, booze, and sweat, as well as some other unidentifiable smell. When he stepped inside, he was faced with a tightly packed saloon that one might see in a movie set in the Wild West. People were sitting around round wooden tables, noisily chatting among themselves with booze in their hands, or whispering softly with serious looks on their faces. Sial Jihu stepped in and walked past the ash and cigarette butts on the floor, before his eyes nearly popped out of his sockets when a woman sped past him, her blonde hair dancing in the air as she did so. She wore the type of a brassiere that exposed over half of her abundant bosom, and not only that, a pair of pink stockings and the matching garter belt, and her swaying derriere was in full display through her see-through underwear. She wasn't the only one, though. He finally spotted many more ladies kitted out in just as shockingly revealing outfits walking around here and there in the pub. This was the meaning of enjoy in the name, huh? He kind of understood what Alex meant when he said that this place wouldn't really suit Sial. It's not like I don't like this, though. He just wasn't used to it, that was all. A short while later, Sial finally found an empty spot by the corner of the bar, and he cautiously settled down there. It was perhaps obvious that he shouldn't really expect a speedy customer service in a place like this one. Sial Jihu spent some time observing the variety of beverage bottles on display on the shelves, before spotting a slightly thin man resting his chin on his elbow on the far side of the bar. Seeing that the man was decked out like a bartender, he obviously worked here. "Excuse me." The man with a bored face and a cigarette hanging loose in his lips glanced back at Sial. "I'd like to ask you a couple of questions." The man breathed out the cigarette smoke and slowly straightened his bent back. He then trudged closer to Sial and asked with half-closed eyes, "You want to order something?" Sial wasn't a dummy. He immediately figured out that the bartender was telling him to buy or order something if he wanted his questions to be answered. "What's good to eat here? A light meal or something more fulfilling?" "Something more fulfilling, please. Haven't had breakfast yet, you see." The bartender opened his eyes a little wider. "How does a bowl of tasty soup, a loaf of soft bread, and a lightly spiced grilled sausage sound to you?" "Sounds good." "Ah, right, we also serve a big serving of steak too. Give me that as well. Rare." The bartender silently gazed at Sial. Seeing this, the youth produced a silver coin and presented it before the man. Only then the bartender smiled amiably and returned 8 nickel coins as change. "Looks like I'll have to roll my sleeves up for the first time in a while. Wait here." The bartender entered the kitchen and soon emerged with the bowl of soup and a large loaf of bread first. The old saying went that hunger was the best appetizer there was. The food tasted amazing. Sial Jihu finished the savory soup and the soft bread in the blink of an eye. The skewered sausage was overflowing with juicy fat, and when he bit into it, the succulent, meaty taste exploded in his mouth. The bartender exited the kitchen while carrying the still sizzling steak on top of a metal plate, before stopping still with a surprised expression on his face after seeing the youth busy licking his fingers in satisfaction. "Why, you seem to enjoy the food." "Yeah, they were really good." "Give me that as well." Was my cooking skill this good? The bartender was taken aback by the sight of the youth unhesitantly cutting into the steak and shoving the meat into his mouth. He still managed to take a bottle of booze from the shelf, though. This is on the house. Its alcohol percentage is low, but it's pretty sweet and should go well with the food. Sial's mouth was full with meat, so he could only nod his head as his thanks. He then grabbed the bottle and chugged the liquid down. A feeling of satisfaction filled him up as the thick aroma of raw honey melted on his tongue. Tasty food possessed this ability to enlighten the mood no matter the occasion. "First time seeing you in Haramark?" the bartender asked, his expression more relaxed than before. "I arrived yesterday." "It's my first time in the city." "From Scheherazade?" "Yes, that's correct." "Aha, oh right, you said you wanted to ask me some questions, right?" Sial Jihu nodded his head and asked, "Is there any work to be found in Haramark? I don't mind whatever it is." I wonder. If you're not talking about part-time jobs then, how about visiting the plaza? There should be quite a few jobs listed on the notice board." "I was there just now, but there weren't a lot of jobs I could take." "In that case, you should start as a porter first. You go around together with others and get some experience. Learn a few things from them, and eventually raise your levels and grab some proper gear along the way." The bartender glanced at Sial's spear and continued on. "A warrior's gotta be at least level 3 if he wants to try his luck joining an expedition. Well, unless you are in a team already, that is." "So that's how it was." "Ah, I remember now that Samuel's team was looking for a new member." Sial Jihu played around with the booze bottle with his fingers a little before asking the bartender, "You perhaps know Carp Diem?" Carp Diem?" The bartender's eyes widened slightly as if he didn't quite understand where this question was coming from. "Of course I know." "If you don't who Carp Diem is, then you'd be considered a spy from elsewhere in Haramark. I mean, aren't they the ones who live for today?" Carp Diem literally meant seize the day. However, the bartender said that the group lived for today. "What are they like?" Carp Diem is a team made up of 3 people. There's no need to mention how skilled they are, of course. Even Cecilia and Triads would occasionally request them with missions. As a team, they would rank in the top 5 in Haramark, no question about it. They were an amazing group of people, as it turned out. Haramark was a bustling, thriving city on its own right. So, if a group was ranked as one of the best in this city, it meant that even if the entire paradise was taken into account, they would still be rated as one of the best. Every member is known for their good skills, but most importantly, their leader is someone quite remarkable. He's a high ranker, as you might expect. "Where do I find Carp Diem?" "Why, you wish to join them?" Sial Jihu nodded his head, prompting the bartender to shake his head around wildly. "Better give that notion up. That team is." But he blurred the ends of his words and spat out a soft groan instead. The bartender then lowered his head slightly. "Don't mind me. I'm not in a position to say anything anyway." The youth got to hear the location from the bartender. Saying thanks for the food, Sial got up and left the pub. After leaving the pub and walking for around 10 minutes, Sial found himself in front of his destination. There were no signboards. Sial thought the bartender's words of an old white building, about so in size, was a pretty unfriendly description, but now that he was here, there was only one white building in the entire neighborhood. Sial got closer to the building and took a peek inside the ground floor before letting out a soft gasp of admiration. A training facility. He got to glimpse the sight of a gym that easily exceeded the one found in the neutral zone. The entire ground floor was converted to facilitate indoor training, it seemed. I want to get back to training again. Sial heard that the second floor was the reception office, and sure enough, there were worn-down stone steps to the side of the structure. As he looked up, he continued to chew his blameless lower lip. As he approached ever closer to the steps, his heart began beating faster and faster. Maybe I shouldn't have asked. If he didn't know anything, then he might have marched straight in, full of spirit. No matter how hard he thought about it, there was no reason for this team to accept him. Even if he considered it from their perspective, the end result remained the same. He suddenly recalled Odilette Delphine, the magician girl who always seemed full of too much energy. If she were in his shoes, would she be hesitating like this? I mean, I'm not a little kid anymore. It was obvious that he'd be refused, but he simply couldn't just let the lone golden commandment opportunity slip through his fingers yet. He needed to at least give it a shot, regardless of what might happen. Sial ended his thoughts there and rapidly climbed up the stairs. He stared at the closed-shut second-floor door for a little while before knocking on it. "Who's there?" He heard a voice coming from inside. "Come in." The door's open. The voice sounded a bit less than enthusiastic, actually. Sial Jihu breathed in deeply and pushed the door open wide. And then saw it. The tilted face of a woman staring at him as she sat on an old couch with her back to him. "Who are you? I've never seen your face before." Her skin was pure white as if she'd painted herself with milk. Her black hair was long enough to reach the floor. More importantly, though her clean, pure, and elegantly shaped eyes, and a cigarette hanging loose between those softly pink lips. Sial's eyes blinked as he stood there completely dumbfounded. The woman with a cocked eyebrow began frowning deeply after seeing him behave like this. "I said, who the hell are you, you dumb shit?" She even started swearing right off the bat, too. The woman reminded Sial of Maria should that be chalked down to him momentarily being confused. "Who is it?" Sounds of heavy footsteps could be heard. Then a big black man suddenly showed up from around the corner. The big guy and Sial looked at each other and opened their mouths simultaneously. "Sial, Hugo?" Hugo must have emerged from the shower or something as water was still dripping off him. "You." First, come on in." Hugo gestured with his hands before actually pulling Sial Jihu inside. He then made the youth sit down on the couch. The woman looked at him while puffing out cigarette smoke. "What, so you two know each other?" "I told you yesterday, didn't I?" "There was a guy I came to Haramark with. Wasn't that Alex? Not just Alex. I told you there was another guy." The woman nodded and swept her gaze over Sial before letting out a small ah. "Is he that newbie you were talking about, coming to Haramark for the first time?" Hugo ignored the woman and talked to Sial instead. "Sial, what brings you here? I'm really surprised to see you here, you know." "Yes, me too. I had no idea that you were a member of Carp Diem, Hugo." Tilda, a rather adorable scream came from the side. The woman hugged herself with her arms and formed a scared expression as if something horrified her. "Ooh, Tilda, hey you. Can't you do something about the way you speak? It's been so long since I last heard polite speech, and it's giving me these nasty goosebumps." "Ignore that, girl. Besides all that." "What brings you here?" "Oh." Sial glanced at the woman who was wearing a sleeveless white tee as well as a pair of hot pants and started talking. "I came here after finding the notice for a job posting." "A job posting?" Hugo's eyes grew extra wide, and he turned his head to look at the woman. "Did we ever place a job posting before?" The woman shrugged her shoulders. "Beats me. But I did hear that, what with the old man retiring and all, we would search for a substitute." "Who told you that?" "Don't be an idiot. Who do you think it was?" "It was Dylan, obviously. Anyways." The woman killed her cigarette by rubbing it against the ashtray and disinterestedly told Hugo. "Hugo, you ask him to leave, okay, Tilda? You want him to leave?" "Obviously. How can he enter our team? We ain't gonna humor a newbie, right?" As expected, joining them was not possible. Sial thought as much, but the reality still tasted bitter in his mouth. The woman lit up a new cigarette and cocked an eyebrow. She saw that Hugo was deliberating on something with a serious look on his face. It was a rare thing to see this idiot whose brain was entirely made up of muscles to think this hard. Just as Sial Jihu was about to get up from the couch, Hugo reached out and grabbed the youth's arms. Wait. You came here after checking out the job posting, right?" "Then wait for a little while longer, okay?" His next words surprised the woman even more. "What? Hey, you want to admit a level 1 to our team? Keep quiet, will you? Hey, Sial, our leader should be here any second, so can you wait for him? I'll put in some good words for you." "Ha!" The woman spat out an exasperated groan of disbelief. It was then. The door creaked open and A customer. Sial heard a deep, husky, and rather dignified voice coming from there. Sial Jihu turned his head towards the doorway and spat out a shocked gasp at the sight of the man entering the premises. He was a darkish man carrying a brown envelope in his hand, and he also happened to boast an enormous physique. He was taller than Hugo by another head, and his body, packed to the brim with muscles, could have come straight from an NBA player. A devil would show up if it was mentioned, as they say. Hugo raised his hand and welcomed the man in. "Oh, good timing, Dylan. Who is he?" "A client. A level 1 warrior saw one of our job postings and came to pay us a visit, Tilda." The woman spoke with a tired voice while resting her chin on her hands. "A level 1, Dylan tilted his head in confusion. "Job postings? I must have posted those a while ago." Dylan studied the youth in front of his eyes with unfathomably deep eyes. Sial Jihu began feeling a strange sense of pressure as the man swept his gaze all over him. "He is a high-ranker archer. He looked more like a warrior simply from his physique alone." Dylan spoke up soon afterwards. "Well, it doesn't matter." The woman looked like she'd been punched in her gut as she faced Dylan. "You being serious?" "Yeah, I am. It's true that we're looking for a new team member, and I haven't placed any restrictions on who may join us. That is why it's not a problem." "Hey, I know that you're the leader and all, but still, aren't you supposed to listen to others' opinions too? We just have to look at the person, that's all." The old man personally said those words, Chohong. With that, the woman named Chohong shut her mouth. She still frowned unhappily while puffing on her cigarette, though. "Tusk, do what you want. Besides that, what happened to the job?" "I can't even call it a job, actually. I just popped into the triads for a bit, that's all." "I heard that they just welcomed a new executive there." "Right. I checked him out so I could remember his face. His name is Hao Win. He's a pretty friendly character." Dylan toothily grinned. Hao Win, when a familiar name was mentioned, Sial's eyes glittered for a second. Hao Win is also in Haramark, in that case. Ah, where's my mind at, I wonder? Dylan was about to settle down on another couch before he hurriedly got back up again. A bit later, Dylan reappeared from around a corner while carrying a pair of teacups with steam rising up. He handed one over to Sial and grinned. "A guest came by, but I've forgotten all about being a good host." "My apologies." "No, it's all right. Thank you." Sial Jihu carefully received the cup. Dylan sipped the tea first, and a frown formed on his face. "Don't mind it if the tea tastes a bit bland, okay? I've been practicing making tea lately, but I can't seem to get any better." Sial smiled softly at Dylan's gentle voice. The youth sensed the other man was trying to be considerate, basically telling him to relax. "Oi, Dylan?" Hugo was about to butt in, but Dylan raised his hand to stop him. "I've heard a bit about you from Hugo. You must be Sial, the level 1 warrior." "First time in Haramark, huh?" "That's correct. Summoned March this year, yeah. That's also correct." "Oh, so you might know Hao Win then. He too graduated from the March class, apparently." Finally, they moved into the main topic. Sial thought that he'd be chased out of this place, but it seemed like they would at least listen to his story first. Could this be thanks to Hugo? Sial Jihu inwardly promised to buy the man a drink at a later stage and stared straight at Dylan. "Okay, Sial. Do you know what kind of a team ours is?" "I've heard some things." "From where? From who?" "From Eat, Drink, and Enjoy. I didn't ask the person's name, so I can't be sure." Dylan nodded his head. The youth didn't just show up with no plan whatsoever, but actually bothered to gather some basic information first. Considering that he had exited from the neutral zone not too long ago, this would have been considered a positive. At least it said that the youth was the type to think things through. "Cool. Well then, how were your records in the tutorial and the neutral zone like?" "My records. Well, you can tell us the amount of survival points you got at the end of the tutorial, and up to how far you went with the mission's difficulty in the neutral zone, that sort of stuff." Dylan raised his teacup, signaling to the youth to relax and be open. Sial Jihu spoke up. "The total amount of survival points I earned at the end of the tutorial was 26,500. Dylan was about to tip the cup towards his lips, but, "As for the missions in the neutral zone, I've cleared up to the impossible difficulty." His hands came to a stop. Hugo's nervously jittery legs also stopped shaking around. It wasn't only those two, though. Even Cho-hong, who was grandly yawning out while covering her mouth with her hand until then, began glaring at him too. Chapter 50. Carp Diem 2. The inside of the Carp Diem's office had become deathly quiet in an instant. It was as if time had come to a standstill. Everyone stopped moving and stared at one person, from disbelief to suspicion, from suspicion to glares. The atmosphere in the room continued to grow colder and colder. Seol Jihu felt his heart become heavier from the unspoken pressure emanating from this uncomfortable silence. He had expected there would be some sort of a response, but he didn't know it would be this bad. You ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Hugo started laughing his head off. Hiya, Tilda. I didn't know you had such a sense of humor. I guess I should change how I look at you now, eh? He cackled and lightly patted Seol on the shoulder. However, everyone present here could see from his exaggerated laughter and movements that the big guy was trying to somehow diffuse this dangerous situation and treat it as a tactless joke of a rookie. Oi! Her voice sounded threatening. Cho-hong slowly corrected her posture. She locked her hands, her legs parted slightly, and her back bent forward a little. Hey, let me tell you something. You showing up here today, that's not a problem, in all honesty. It was as if she was trying not to sound angry, but the tone was really too low for a woman's voice. And the pitch remained chillingly flat as well. Job posting. Yeah, you could have seen that and came to talk to us. Just like Dylan said, there are no restrictions after all. That's all fine and good. Her eyes, visible behind her flowing black hair, gleamed coldly. The thing is, her eyes, seemingly fixed to the floor, emitted a chilling light so scary that it made people avert their gazes instinctively. If you showed up here, the office of Carp Diem, just to throw around unfunny jokes, then, as a person who has to listen to you, my position will have to change somewhat. Get my drift. Cho-hong. Shut up, Hugo. Cho-hong replied sharply, pulled the cigarette out from her lips, and slowly breathed out the blue smoke. She then stared straight at Seol Jihu and spoke. I'll give you another chance. Right now, I'm willing to overlook this matter as a rookie who wants to join us cracking a cute little lie and nothing more. Hugo sighed out in relief. So, this time don't utter bullshit and speak the truth. Cho-hong stopped there and remained silent. Seol Jihu nodded his head as his response and opened his mouth to speak. Excluding the points I received as the starting bonus as well as the multiplier, the original points tally I had at the end of the tutorial was 2,150. Hugo's complexion hardened. The highest difficulty missions in the neutral zone that I cleared with my own skills were rated very hard. I did succeed in clearing the impossible, but that was just due to luck, not my own skill. Cho-hong's brows began quivering. Oh. So you saying that you really did have 26,500 points and somehow did clear the impossible mission, is that it? A strange smile formed on her face as she lifted her butt off the couch ever so slightly. That's correct. Ah, really now? It was right then. Pow. As soon as he blinked, Seol Jihu saw the back of Dylan's hand that was as big as a pot's lid right in front of his nose. Not only that, Cho-hong's fist blocked by that hand too. But when? He failed to even notice her throwing a punch, never mind her arm moving before that. He felt the chill run down his back, not from the fact that he nearly got hit by her, but the fact that he couldn't even see it coming. Dylan, violence isn't the answer, Cho-hong. The old man repeatedly told you to curb that temper of yours, didn't he? But this bastard? Seol. Dylan succeeded in placating Cho-hong for the time being and called out to Seol Jihu. No, the youth thought that he was being called, but that turned out to be false. Seol, ah. Dylan was actually muttering that name out while trying to remember something. He then lightly slapped his own closely cropped head. I was wondering why that name sounded so familiar. How Win, right? So that was you? What are you talking about? This time it was Hugo who asked. How Win was talking about a certain guy. Apparently among those summoned for this year's March selection, a super rookie appeared. I've heard the name in passing, but I think it might have been Seol. Damn it, why couldn't I have thought about that as soon as I saw him? Wow, what? Cho-hong's head swiveled and she looked at Dylan. She then began laughing nervously, her neck trembling slightly. Her face remained disbelieving as she raised her voice. Dylan, what are you saying? If you come out like that, it's like this whole thing is true, so stop it. She must have been really freaked out because her voice was quivering noticeably now. I understand. I also thought it was a bunch of baloney when I heard it the first time, too. Dylan chuckled as if he found this whole thing rather interesting and got up from his seat. I guess I'll just confirm it for myself then. He leisurely went off somewhere, and when he returned, he was carrying a large, clear crystal ball. He placed it on the coffee table and placed his hand on top, and then the crystal began emitting light. What's that? Sial Jihu's curiosity perked up at seeing an object he had not seen before. A short while later, the crystal's entire surface was enveloped in a soft glow. And at the same time, oh, for Dylan to give me a call first, isn't this a pleasant surprise? A voice of a person flowed out from it. That uniquely haughty, mezzo-soprano tone of voice sounded rather familiar to the Sial Jihu's ears. I heard that you returned to Haramark recently. I'm calling you to congratulate you on successfully concluding the neutral zone. Congratulating me, huh? Indeed, that's a nice notion. You have any idea how much I missed the air of paradise? I was also shocked after learning that you were being put in charge of the neutral zone, Cinzia. Other than being bored out of my mind, it wasn't so bad. A couple of interesting things happened too, and that kept me entertained in the meantime. Interesting things, you say? Oh, did you call me because you were also curious about that? Cackling laughter came out from the crystal ball. Sial Jihu dazedly stared at the crystal. Ever since his arrival in Haramark, one thing or another managed to surprise him constantly. That was Cinzia on the other side. She sure looked like someone pretty powerful when he first saw her in the neutral zone. But after seeing Dylan chatting so easily to someone even Kim Hanna referred to as a big shot in paradise, Sial Jihu had no choice but to view Dylan in a new light. You're not the only one to have asked me about this. I've been repeating the same shit over and over again like a damn parrot. By this point, I think I've probably memorized a script. It's like I've become a call center employee. I'd also like to hear the story if you don't mind. Well, it's not like I mind. It's something that's bound to spread around anyways, and I do owe a few debts to Carp Diem too. Chohong got up and sidled up right next to the crystal ball. Oh, Chohong, is that you? Hey, been a while. It really has. Feels like I haven't seen you in ages. Okay, fine, I know, so please hurry up with the story. Chohong urged Cinzia to move on. Fine. Took first place with a points tally of 26,500. Solo cleared the neutral zone's missions up to hard difficulty. Formed a team with 5 others afterwards, and successfully cleared all of the very hard difficulty missions. And relying on a truly out-there method, Solo cleared the impossible mission too. Finally, one of only 2 gold marks in history. Are you happy now? When the gold mark was mentioned, the sounds of saliva being swallowed could be heard in the office. Thank you for telling us that. I'll return the favor soon. It's not a problem. Lots of people already know this anyways. Oh, we might be seeing each other pretty soon too. I'll be sending someone over there not too long from now. The crystal ball stopped glowing after that. The manager of the neutral zone for the March selection confirmed the story. It'd be hard for anyone to suggest that a leader of an organization, Cinzia, was spewing nonsense for fun. Even more so, if one knew what her personality was like. No matter how deeply they thought about it, it was impossible. Yet, the impossibility had become a reality. Son of a... Chohong finally began to breathe again and plopped down on the couch with an expression of someone who saw a true monster. Meanwhile, Hugo could only mutter to himself. Whoa, with a small voice. A gold mark is it. Dylan sipped on the tea and organized his thoughts for a while before slowly opening his mouth. Looks like I'll have to change how we go about things. Sial, Dylan put the teacup down and spoke with a serious face. I now know what kind of person you are. There are many things we're curious about, and what with this being such an unbelievable story to begin with, please do try to understand where we're coming from, okay? Dylan's calm voice seemed to possess this mystifying ability to calm all those listening to him. It's fine. Thanks. Right. About the job posting. Dylan stopped there and wordlessly stared at Sial. The youth stiffened slightly in nervousness as the big guy studied every square inch of his face. A short moment of silence later, Dylan continued on. "I'd like to hear your honest answer to my question." "Of course." "All right, what was your reason for choosing us?" This question took Sial by surprise. With that kind of a record, you could have chosen any of the powerful organizations in Paradise, and they would welcomed you with open arms. "I'm wondering why you chose to come to Haramark and knock on Karp Deem's door instead of theirs." Sial Jihu became speechless then. What Kim Hanna told him wasn't something he'd walk around telling everyone he met, and also he couldn't come out and say, "I activated my 9 eyes in front of the notice board, and the parchment you placed there was glowing in gold color signifying the Golden Commandment." Sial Jihu hesitated for a long time before replying with an awkward smile on his face. "Well, I like you training facility." Dylan slowly closed his eyes. Sial Jihu returned to eat, drink, and enjoy, found a place to sit, and began grandly sighing out. The pub remained as noisy as before, but he didn't care about that at the moment. His head was filled with the recollections of the moment he got rejected to notice his surroundings. "My bad, but looks like we can't work together. And if I were to give you advice, you should leave Haramark as soon as possible. You will find many good teams in other cities. Starting in those places might be a better choice for you." Sial Jihu couldn't say anything to those simple yet resolute and firm rejection. In the end, he could only return to the pub and mournfully sip on the alcoholic beverage. He came to Haramark full of dreams, yet his current situation, having nowhere else to go, seemed too pitiful even to his own eyes. Sial Jihu rested his chin on his hand and pouted with a worried expression etched on his face. If only it weren't for Sinyang. He might have joined up with a good team in Scheherazade by now and be away on an adventure already. Maybe I should have just joined Sinyang in the first place. If he did, then he would have received incredible amount of support, and just as importantly, along with Yun Seora, who said she'd do her best. Tusk. Sial Jihu licked his lips and took a swig out of the bottle. He was so happy and content while in the neutral zone, but now that he was outside, he sure felt like a fool now. Also, he knew that he couldn't continue to do nothing and suck on his thumbs forever, even though he had a bit of money on him. I want to do something. The issue was with his low level. He was a level 1. More importantly, there was no team stupid enough to let a novice warrior join them when there were so many of them out there to begin with. There's nothing I can do, I guess. I gotta start from the bottom as a porter and work my way up. Just as he pulled out a cigarette and lit it up while feeling a bit uneasy. Slam. There was a loud noise of someone hitting the table, and then, "Everyone, your attention, please." A man's loud shout brought silence into the once noisy establishment. Sial Jihu took a glance and saw a man standing there with a hand raised up in the air. He was built quite lean, and his long hair extended down to his waist. "Is there a skilled warrior or a priest among you?" "Ah, I'm also searching for a porter as well, so it does not matter if your level is low." "What are you talking about, Samuel?" A guy sitting on the table next to the man, Samuel, asked while chewing on a snack. Samuel lowered his hand and answered, "It's a mission issued by the royal family. We'll be scouting the Forest of Denial." Fuck that. "Why would I go to that god-forsaken place?" The guy mouthed some snide remarks and went back to mind his own business. Others displayed roughly a similar attitude. Some shook their heads while a few others began smirking derisively. However, Sial Jihu was different. He activated 9 eyes as soon as hearing that a porter would be hired, and the result was Samuel had no colors in him. At least, there were no colors related to danger. Also, he was not really in a situation to be picky. He should try to grasp every opportunity that had presented itself. Sial moved, thinking that at the bare minimum, he should listen to what other party had to say before deciding. Samuel showed complete disregard towards the reactions of his fellow pubgoers, but when he saw Sial Jihu's approach, a bright smile lit up on his face. "Oh ho, our first lucky person arrives. I heard that you're looking for a porter. Indeed, you have any prior experience?" "No, this will be my first time." "First time? Samuel looked a bit troubled then. Will this be a no, too? I agree. It was then Sial Jihu heard a rather familiar voice. Samuel turned around to look. You know this guy, Alex? Yup, and I'm completely on board with this idea. And I guarantee that you won't regret it. Sial Jihu blinked his eyes after hearing the name Alex. There was a familiar young man wearing a priest outfit sitting around Samuel's table waving his hand at him. If Alex guarantees it, then I guess it's not so bad. All right then, come join us here. Samuel nodded his head and pulled Sial Jihu into one of the empty seats. Alex, good to see you again. I had no idea that we'd run into each other so quickly. Yes, me too. I'm actually a member of Samuel's team, you see. By the way, I see that you're a man at the end of the day. Hehehe. Alex began grinning in a sly manner. Whoa, I can see that you two are pretty familiar with each other, so why don't you give us a chance to say hello too? Samuel waved his hand around between the two youths and reached for a handshake. Hey there, name's Samuel. I'm the leader of this team. I'm a level 4 Pathfinder. I'm Sial, a level 1 warrior. Q, I love how polite Asians are. Samuel then triumphantly pointed to his left. A brunette woman with curly hair as well as a woman with short, bright platinum blonde hair sat to his side. You already know Alex, so I'll exclude him. Firstly, this lady here, she's Clara, a level 2 hunter, and next to her is Tilda Grace, a level 3 shield swordswoman. In a way, you could say that she's your senior. Two women raised her hands at the same time and waved at him. Sial Jihu also raised his head and waved back, prompting the two ladies to giggle among themselves. For some reason, they kept stealing glances at his way. Oh yeah, you said it'll be your first time as a porter? Yes. It's not going to be a tough job, actually. We'll be asking you every now and then to take care of some small things, but on the whole, just think of your job as carrying our luggage around for the entire duration of the expedition. Is that all I have to do? Sial Jihu tilted his head slightly, thinking this would be too simple if that were the case. Of course, there are a few rules you gotta stick by. First of all, you can't fall behind in the middle of the trip. It'd get troublesome if you end up holding us back, you know what I mean. And then you shouldn't rashly jump into a fight, too. Things might get complicated and we aren't expecting a porter to fight for us either. So how about it? It's easy, right? Yes, it sounds easy. Good, now let's talk about splitting our rewards. First of all, a porter has no right to ask for any artifacts recovered during an expedition. Do you agree? Sial Jihu had no idea what this artifact thing could be, but still agreed nonetheless. This was a rule every Earthling should be aware of already, but since it would be Sial's first time as a porter, Samuel was actually going out of his way to explain things. Good. As for other rewards, we split everything equally. Really? Sial was taken back by this proposal. He was thinking that he'd be nothing more than a glorified slave, but now that he heard the terms, it was better than he expected. You're splitting equally even with a porter? Obviously. A porter is still a member of the team, right? Samuel looked befuddled as if he couldn't quite understand why the youth was asking this question, which only led Sial further down the confusion avenue. However, the Pathfinder quickly realized what happened here, and a wry smile formed on his face. Yeah, I heard that there are some teams out there that treat their porters like slaves, but I'm not one of them. You're an Earthling like me, and you are just trying to earn some experience after all. He was implying that, in Lost Paradise, the relationship between a team and a porter was a mutually beneficial one. You help us and let us focus on the expedition, and we will protect you from the danger. Okay, I understand. However, don't expect to be treated too nicely, okay? You being a part of the team will make it a bit easier for the rest of us. But if you weren't here, then we'd have carried our own luggage anyway. When considering the fact that most of the Earthlings would start as a porter regardless of whether one was a contracted or an invited, Samuel's words were being rather considerate. Okay, now, time to get to the main topic at hand. Samuel formed a sly smile and then he suddenly got very close to Sial's ear in order to whisper something. I hope that you didn't think I'd be really going on a recon to the Forest of Denial. Hearing that hushed whisper, Sial Jihu's expression became hard to read as well. Oh. Of course, we will carry out our mission, no problem. However, Oopsie, we should finish our chat elsewhere. Samuel whispered up to there and pointed to the exit of the pub with his chin. Follow us. Let's talk somewhere a bit quieter. When you hear what I have to say, even you'll think that you've stumbled upon a jackpot. I guarantee it. Samuel winked and shouted out, "Let's get out of here," before energetically standing up from his seat. Let's go. Decide after hearing us out. If you don't like what you hear, then you can opt to leave afterwards. Alex also voiced his opinion. Sial Jihu wondered whether there really was a need to change the venue, but he didn't say anything and got up as well. Alex stood up with a happy smile on his face and muttered out, "I've got a good feeling about this expedition." "How come?" "Because we're getting a level 3 warrior as a porter. You wouldn't find something so ridiculous in any other teams around these parts. I'm a level 1, though." Sure. Alex giggled hoarsely in Carp Deem's office. After Sial Jihu left, the office remained eerily quiet for some time. Each of them had a lot to think about. Dylan stared outside and continued to suck hard on his cigarette, while Hugo formed a facial expression that cried out, "I don't understand what happened." Shit. How fucking embarrassing. Chohong laid down on the couch and continued to complain. Really? Fuck me. Just how the hell did he clear it? While Chohong continued to voice her dissatisfaction, Hugo finally opened his mouth to ask, "Dylan, I still don't get it." Chohong quickly shot him a glare from the corner of her eyes. Hugo waved his hand around to indicate that he knew. "I'm not saying I'm not gonna follow your decision since you're our leader and all, but I still don't get it. I mean, isn't he good enough for us to accept?" "Not at all." Dylan replied simply, "If you consider our team's unique nature, you should realize why we can't have him join us. But still, what we need is a warrior who can boost our combat potential right away. A newbie isn't suitable." Dylan finished there and continued to puff on his cigarette. Dylan. "Hugo, that's enough." Chohong butted in while scratching her head. "The current leader of Carp Deem is Dylan. The old man personally appointed him. Let's not waste time arguing about this anymore." "I know that you are right, but man. Hugh." Hugo sighed as if he was still ruining the missed opportunity. Dylan eventually killed the cigarette and slowly opened his mouth. He had such clear eyes. Chohong and Hugo turned their confused faces towards Dylan. "What are you talking about, all of a sudden? Did some of the old man rub off on you or something?" He. "Maybe. In any case, that guy named Sial, it is a bit regrettable. I understand where Hugo's coming from." "That's right, so, let's bring him under our wings. Weren't we newbies once upon a time, too?" "Sial is a blank canvas." Dylan calmly replied. "He's a huge blank canvas, unsullied by any paint whatsoever. I can't even begin to fathom how big the dimensions of this canvas is, so how can I, or anyone else for that matter, carelessly throw some paint around on it? What the hell?" "Talking away so I can understand what you're on about, will ya?" Hugo complained bitterly, causing Dylan to form a slight smirk. "I acknowledge that he's incredible, but he's still a level 1. He doesn't know a lot, so he's bound to make a few mistakes, too. That is why he can't join teams like ours." Hugo was shouting out at the top of voice from sheer frustration, only to fall utterly dazed from those words. Dylan continued on. "This is the most important time for Sial. This is the time when his future path is determined and when his unbelievable potential starts to reveal itself." "Are you saying we aren't good enough for him?" "Rather than us not being good enough, it's more to do with who we are. We always fight with our lives on the line. We've experienced all sorts of shit and have also grown cynical in the process. What would a guy like Sial learn from us then?" Dylan's calm explanations meant Hugo couldn't come up with anything. "This is how I see it. Perfectly covering for his mistakes from behind and leading him from the front while teaching him all he needs to know. Sial needs to join a team like that, which means, at the bare minimum, that ain't us. Sure, Chohong and I are no good, but still, we have you and the old man." Hugo spoke with a voice clearly less vociferous than before. "I'm not that confident in making it work, and you know that the old man is about to retire soon." Dylan firmly stated his position and let off a long sigh. "All right, let's stop talking about this matter and move on. We should get going anyways." "To where?" Choi Hong asked this time. "Work. It's a request from Samuel's team. Hugo, get up, man. Let's go." Hugo licked his lips and slowly nodded his head. Okay, fine, I think I get it now. Anyway, what work are we talking about here? Looks like we'll have to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, but he did say it'll be a pretty delicious deal for all of us. Well, if it's that bastard, there's definitely merit in hearing him out. Where are we meeting him? At this inn. Maybe he's got some kind of a plan all worked out. In any case, let's get going. Dylan pushed the door of the office open to leave, his other hand in his pocket.